Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome to a special breaking news stream. We have a major situation breaking out in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, tonight. We have seen firefights being reported near the capital of Caracas. We've also seen that Maduro's soldiers are deploying to the streets, and also there is allegedly a possible drone incursion above the Venezuelan airspace, and right now the details are not perfectly clear, but we are monitoring, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we're going to be covering the past few hours of the breaking news developments that we have had here on this Monday on this special breaking news stream, as reports have emerged of significant amounts of gunfire breaking out throughout the entirety of the city of Caracas, with Venezuelan air assets being mobilized from nearby Aragua State. From what we understand, F-16s and Su-30s were airborne just moments ago, and significant amounts of ground fire were heard not only throughout the entirety of the city of Caracas, but especially near to the Miraflores Presidential Palace within the central area of the city of Caracas. At this moment, we're trying to gather further information, as this situation is developing live at this moment, about what is going on exactly on the ground and what the cause of the significant ground fire and also the significant amounts of firefights that have been reported near to the presidential palace is entirely about. At the moment, two situations are highly likely. Either this appears to have been some sort of a friendly fire incident where they fired on one of their own drones, or they are attempting some form of a military coup. It's unclear which one it is, at least at the moment, and we are still trying to get enough information to be able to discern exactly what's going on, but in the meantime, we will be bringing y'all through all of the information that we have gotten so far about what's going on inside of Caracas at this moment. Moving us on directly into some of our first clips, we were able to report and confirm that air defense fire was being seen prolifically throughout large areas of the city, as seen in this clip right here.
Familia, otra vez, están bombardeando hacia arriba.
You can hear the sounds of heavy machine gun fire in the background, and the sight of tracers flying through the air.
Ay, no, familia, ¿qué va a pasar con nosotros?
We then were additionally able to see in another clip what appears to be further gunfire throughout the area of the city, which we could see in this clip right here.
¡Los plomo,
outside
Also,
of that,
by the way, real quick, folks, we are currently hearing multiple different versions of the story about what's happening right now. I just want to reiterate that right now it is not perfectly clear what is happening inside of Venezuela. Some people are running with the idea that this was somehow a friendly fire incident with a drone. We do not know that for a fact. So it could be possible that that is what happened. It certainly is possible that maybe the Venezuelans, while they're on high alert, have misidentified their own drone and shot at it. But we do not know that for a fact. So we're currently waiting to see if we can get corroboration of that to see if that actually is the case.
and we are trying to see what exactly is going on within the area of the city. But one thing we can confirm, however, is what we've seen on video and picture evidence, including additional Air Force activity within the area, as we did hear that Su-30 Mk2s and F-16AB multi-role fighters were spotted flying towards Miraflores area in Caracas from the Aragua state. From what we generally understand, these air assets most likely were all mobilized from the air base just south of the city of Maracay, near to the area of the Lago de Valencia, or the Valencia Lake. This appears to be the airbase that most of these aircraft would have flown from. As you can see, some of the Su-30 Mk2s that were mentioned just prior spotted on satellite photography at this airbase on Google Maps. For this reason, we believe that these aircraft were mobilized and scrambled from that airbase and then flew towards the Caracas city area and apparently were in the area for some time. There's also additional reports that these aircraft may be returning back to their airbase near to Maracay, but we are unsure of that at the moment, and there is a decent likelihood that these aircraft may still be over the area of Caracas at this moment. Additionally, we were able to see out in the further suburbs that apparently, while the air defense fire was still ongoing, which I'll show you all an additional clip of right here, it appears that there were actual power outages that are now being reported within some suburbs of Caracas as well.
Little doggo.
Little pupper. He's getting excited. After we watch this clip, we'll actually stop our current coverage of what has been going on to get you all more breaking news coming out of this moment. And Matthew, what breaking news do we have at this moment?
Okay, so right now we are getting some breaking news. We have heard that the White House has weighed in on the situation currently ongoing in Venezuela. They affirm that they are not involved. The United States military is not involved in whatever's happening on the ground in Venezuela right now. They say that they are aware of the gunfire and alleged drone sightings over the Venezuelan airspace, but they have no idea what is actually happening. So nobody's really entirely sure. There's a lot of speculation out there about what's happening, but nobody's entirely sure what it is. For the moment, though, it appears that maybe the gunfire is dying down a bit. We're still not sure why there was gunfire in the first place, but there's still allegations that maybe there is isolated gunfire in some parts of Miraflores that we're hearing about right this second. So, I mean, the speculation has been all over the map, folks. It's been drone incursions. That's been one speculation. Some people are saying it could be a coup. Some people are saying that maybe it's some type of internal power struggle, maybe amongst the forces that are in charge right now. Nobody's entirely sure. So, at least as far as we know right now, the U.S. is not involved in this current situation.
And from what we can understand, at least according to the United States statements currently, this is apparently not involving any U.S. forces in any degree whatsoever, and this appears to be an entirely internal Venezuelan affair. So that does rule out future U.S. involvement or current U.S. involvement, at least at this moment, as we do know that based off of the prior incident with the United States capturing Maduro with the U.S. Special Forces raid, that the United States never openly denied that what was going on in Caracas was in fact U.S. actions, even in the midst of it going on. They actually, as a matter of fact, stated that they knew of the explosions going on and left the statement as it was. Currently, they're denying any involvement in the internal situation in Venezuela, meaning that it is going to be leaning into a domestic situation, either friendly fire that was just conducted against a drone, or this may be an attempted coup, although we're not entirely sure on either of those, and we are still trying to get more information at this moment to figure out which one of it would be. We have been able to hear, however, that some power outages have been reported in some parts of Caracas during this very moment in time, outside the ones that were caused prior by the U.S. airstrikes on electrical substations near to the Fortuna area. Moving us further on in and into the central area of the city of Caracas, we did also get some additional footage as well, showing us the situation on the streets of Caracas, including this clip right here.
Seems to be chaos.
And a lot of confusion. And then this guy went, "Ee!" So, I don't even think that's the same clip. But moving on from that and on into our next one, we also saw earlier BMP3s were also in the streets, and we also were able to hear what sounded almost like firefights in the streets. Not air defense fire, but apparently a possible infantry firefight that broke out within the streets. Here's the clip of that as well.
That's some heavy fire right there. And also, that's ground fire. It sounds like I'm not sure if I'm hearing this properly, but it sounds like there's one group of fire that's firing at another. It sounds like somebody's returning fire.
It actually does sound like two infantry squads that appear to be engaging each other on the street, and we don't know why. It could be, folks, just to put this out there because this is a likely possibility. It could be that the Venezuelan army is actually in the midst of panic right now, and considering that drones were reportedly spotted over the area of their airspace, it may have been that they thought that another U.S. Special Forces raid was being conducted, and the first squad of whoever that came around the corner within their line of sight, they opened fire on, and the other group that was taking the fire thought that it may be U.S. Special Forces, and so they're returning firing back in turn. Or it could be that both of these forces are involved in an ongoing coup, with one side loyal to the group conducting the coup, and the other side loyal to the vice president of Venezuela. It's a little bit unclear at the moment what exactly is going on, but it is pretty damn clear at the moment, at least, that there are some forms of firefights happening within the streets. We just don't know why. We also were able to see an additional clip here showing Venezuelan armed forces moving around in the streets, apparently accompanied by a BMP-3. But that's the end of that clip, and we do have further breaking news coming out at this moment. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And we do have some breaking news right now at Miraflores, which is in the capital Caracas. We are seeing that apparently military reinforcements have shown up in the city. It's hard to tell exactly what that is. It appears to be a 6x6, or maybe a 6x6 possibly, with a machine gun on top of it. There's two of them here in a parking lot, along with some other military equipment in Miraflores near the Presidential Palace. So whatever has happened, they are bringing in military reinforcements for whatever's happening on the ground right now, and we see them parked behind some building near the Presidential Palace. So that's another thing we're seeing right now.
And I'm going to be honest with y'all, folks. I have absolutely no clue what in the world these things are. I would not have an idea at all. I've never seen a vehicle like that in my life, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm verbally distancing myself from this thing because it's hideous, but I actually have no clue what in the world that thing is. I guess
it's like cartel looking. It looks like something the cartel would be running around with a machine gun on the top of it like that. This is a strange vehicle.
I mean, it is quite bizarre. I don't really know what to even make of that thing or what they are. They appear to have some form of a turret on the vehicle. It's a 3-axle, 6-wheel vehicle. And that's the best we can get on it. I can't even find this thing in a registry of Venezuelan Armed Forces equipment, so I have no clue what that is at all. But anyways, moving on out of that, while we are able to confirm that there are apparently reinforcements arriving within the area of Miraflores, we have actually been able to see the firefights breaking out around the area of Miraflores. Some people have been wondering, what is Miraflores, and why in the world is that such a significant thing within Venezuela? Miraflores is actually the presidential palace of the state of Venezuela, or the Republic of Venezuela as it's officially called, and that serves as the official residence of the president of Venezuela, whoever that may be. So it's basically the Venezuelan equivalent of the White House. Let me quickly show y'all the Miraflores Palace, not Miraflores there. Hang on, let me go get the Miraflores Palace in Caracas. And this would actually be the very palace of which we speak, which is the Miraflores Palace, the presidential palace of Venezuela. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's any street view down there, but you can see exactly where this is relative to the rest of Caracas, which is somewhere around the area of the barracks of the 4F that was actually hit by the U.S. airstrike prior just several days ago. From what we understand, most of the firefights are actually happening around this area, which is incredibly interesting because the 4F barracks, while also serving as the mausoleum to Hugo Chavez, it also is a military barracks, meaning that there is an existing garrison of Bolivar Army forces that are based just a couple of blocks away from the Miraflores Palace. That leads us to believe that if there is an ongoing coup, whatever remnants that survived the U.S. airstrike on the 4F barracks may be the ones that are conducting the coup, or they may be loyal to the vice president of Venezuela, which is apparently taking up residence in the Miraflores Palace, and may be defending the palace against whoever is conducting the coup. or everyone's gotten incredibly confused and they're wildly scared and they're all firing at each other, although there isn't an active coup, because they think the other squad that they're firing at might be U.S. Special Forces, and they're not. That is also a possibility as well, and we're trying to figure out which is which. But I can get you all the videos of the firefights that were happening near to the Miraflores Palace. This one is generally a duplicate, but let me see if I have the reports of the direct fire near to the palace. And we also had a tweet that apparently someone was being fired at directly within there, and I don't know what was up with that, but someone was saying that they were shooting at me really heavy, and we don't even know who in the world that was in Venezuela, and why in the world they're saying they're even inside of the Miraflores Palace to be shot at. We don't know if that's like the groundskeeper or the butler or something, but apparently they got on Twitter and stated they were being shot at. Additionally, we also were able to see that there were more reports, at least earlier on, of the drone sighting, including these Venezuelan soldiers, which were filming themselves, actually shouting at each other that apparently there was some sort of a drone that had been spotted.
It sounded like the guy was yelling something about drones they were seeing in the sky right there, which seems to be corroborating the idea that there were some type of unidentified drones in the sky near the presidential palace that may have triggered an overreaction possibly. But I think the one post that we have that has people really thinking that this could be some sort of power struggle or coup attempt is we do have a post showing what appears to be a large motorcycle gang or something of that nature. Lots of motorcycles going up the street toward the presidential palace that we can see here. I just put that in the likes tab, by the way, Enforcer, if you're looking for it. It shows a bunch of motorcycles going up the street on into the presidential palace.
And let's take a look at that really quickly. I actually pulled up, folks, a clip of the colectivos, which were seen in the streets earlier today. But we also have this clip as well under the likes tab, if I'm not mistaken, of the motorcyclists making their way towards the area of the Miraflores Presidential Palace. You can see their headlights filling the street down there in the picture.
Yeah, that appears to be the case. I think this is the main image here that has people thinking this is some type of coup attempt. It was alleged that maybe this group here was doing some of the firing, but we're not really sure if they were. Right now, there's a lot of unknowns still, but there sounds to be like firefights in the streets. To me, it sounds like two groups or maybe multiple groups firing at each other and returning fire. So it could be maybe mass fear that's causing this. Maybe they've overreacted to something that was normal and they started firing at each other. That is possible. They did just get attacked the other night, so they were probably on edge, but that would be a hell of a friendly fire situation if that truly is what it is.
That would be quite a wild sort of a friendly fire situation, without a doubt. And also to show you all this as well, to add in further to the factionality that's starting to exist within Venezuela, we saw earlier in the day, just hours before this started to break out, that there appeared to be a large presence of colectivos within the street. Colectivos are basically a citizenry militia of the Republic of Venezuela that's organized through the Collective Resistance headquarters in Fort Tiuna, which was hit in the midst of the U.S. attacks and airstrikes. But we did see that nonetheless there was a large presence of Colectivos in the street, which are basically just armed citizenry. That are in support, mind you all, of the Maduro regime and the socialist revolution that exists within the country. You see them there in a town square somewhere within the city. And we can also see their motorcycles parked over there as well, which gives a lot of credence to the idea that whatever group has currently made its way towards the presidential palace is highly likely the colectivos that we were just seeing here a moment ago. We don't really know what they would be doing at this moment, and there has been a lot of speculation, and I'll bring y'all through a little bit of it that we've heard about what could be going on if the colectivos are doing something around the presidential palace, and I'll bring y'all through a couple of the theories. One theory is that the vice president of Venezuela, who is now the acting president of Venezuela, has actually decided that she is going to resist the U.S. This may have led to some general somewhere within the country, at least going off of all the hypotheticals that we can work off of right now. This may have led some general in the country to realize that it would probably be better to overthrow the current vice president and install a more pro-U.S. government to try and save their own skin and also put themselves in an incredibly advantageous position backed by U.S. support. So there may be an active coup against the vice president by some other general within the Bolivar Armed Forces, and the colectivos have been mobilized to defend the vice president. On the other hand, on the flip side, there is also the possibility that the vice president may be in the midst of negotiating with the United States. And considering that the colectivos are an armed militia of citizens that do not have really any allegiance to the military, meaning that they're entirely fueled by ideological prospects solely, they may realize that, or at least think in their minds, that the vice president of Venezuela is about to betray the Venezuelan people, and for that reason, they may be the ones that are attempting an armed coup of the vice president. And then we're seeing that Venezuelan armed forces are actually in the street trying to defend the vice president. So it could be going either way at this moment, and we don't really know exactly what's going on. And I have to make that incredibly clear, folks, that this is broken out so quickly, and there's been quite literally no announcements from anyone, the Venezuelan government, the U.S. government, or anyone else in between, that literally anything could be happening on the ground right now, and we don't really have a clear picture as to exactly what's happening inside of the city streets, rather than the fact that we are confirming active firefights. But we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we do have some more breaking news. Take this with a grain of salt, by the way. This is a early report. I'm not totally sure if this is accurate, and we're going to have to sort of wait for more confirmation. But I've seen multiple people, including this one individual here who appears to be in Venezuela, claiming that government buildings are being evacuated in Caracas. Take that with a grain of salt, though. We have not gotten visual confirmation of that, but I have seen multiple different sources claim that this is happening, and we're waiting to see if we can get visual confirmation of this happening. So we just do not know right now. Of course, we do know that the presidential palace is at the center of a major situation right now. So that's obviously apparently close by to where Maduro was captured the other night. So it's possible, but we're just not totally sure. So we'll have to wait for more confirmation.
And we're trying to get as much confirmation as we can at the moment, folks, just to get y'all through a little bit of what we have left as far as what's happening inside of Caracas. We have also been able to see as well, making sure to get us through all of our clips and show y'all anything that y'all might have not seen yet, that the Venezuelan government did state, at least for a moment, that the situation is under control, but we don't really know how accurate that is, and generally countries that are in incredibly bad situations generally say the situation is under control. So we don't really know if that statement is really a lot to be worked off of. We did get one other clip of anti-aircraft fire in the city as well, right here.
Escóndete, ¿qué es eso?
That's the end of that clip right there. But that is the current situation that we are seeing inside of the city of Venezuela. And this situation has now been going on for approximately about an hour and a half. So we are still waiting to get further information on the ground. And while we could get more video and picture evidence, folks, which will be, of course, great to be able to show y'all what exactly is going on the ground, what we're really trying to look for at this moment is some form of statements either by a possible coup attempt or by the Venezuelan government itself, speaking to the situation and what exactly is going on. There are several different hypothetical scenarios which could be going on right now. One of them being generally a coup, which could take the form of many different ways that a coup could be conducted, or it could have been the possibility that there was a false flag that has happened within the area, as Venezuelan forces may have just misidentified one of their air forces in the form of a drone or an aircraft as an enemy drone of the United States, and may have actually started to open fire on the drone, which then led to panic throughout the entirety of the city and the infantry firefights that we then saw in some of the city streets, which is also somewhat likely, although we're not really sure which is which and what exactly is going on the ground right now. So y'all are actually watching as we are seeing this mystery develop on air as to what exactly is going on in Caracas, because it is an absolutely chaotic situation with really no clear structure, intent, or purpose, which, to be entirely honest with y'all folks, would lead me to more so believe that this is a coup attempt than anything else. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so I'm seeing a lot of people claiming that they know for a fact what's happening in Venezuela. I have seen sources try to say with certainty that this was a friendly fire incident, and they may be correct. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I don't know how they're confirming that, because right now we have no confirmation from any government source that that is what happened. So we can't run with that until we get some type of confirmation. I know some people are running with it, but we aren't going to do that here on the channel until we get confirmation. So what do you think is happening in Venezuela in the audience's opinion? And 52% said it's likely a coup attempt on the government, while 17% said it's a friendly fire incident, and 11% said it's likely an unknown drone incursion. So originally, I had thought that maybe this was a coup attempt on the government, and it still could be one. We're just not sure. But considering the fact that there was apparently a drone in the sky, at least according to multiple different sources, we're not sure whose drone it is. There's still a lot of unknowns, so it's kind of hard to say anything for a fact right now. But I'm leaning toward the idea that maybe it was a friendly fire incident. Maybe the forces started firing on each other after a drone flew over. They could have mistaken the air defense fire for an attack and then started firing at their comrades down the street. That would be insane, to say the least, I would say. But it is possible considering the Venezuelans are on high alert, and also they're in a bit of a panic because they just got attacked. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to be entirely honest with y'all. I would have to be with the 50% as well. It seems more likely to me that there may be a coup attempt on the government than anything else, because the fact that there are infantry-based firefights happening in the streets is something that would be pretty hard to see happen in most normal situations, even in the midst of forces being poorly trained and incredibly scared, and texting their mom to come pick them up. They're scared and they want to go home. That's very rare to see these sorts of mass incidents of friendly fire happening in the streets because of panic. The Ukrainian armed forces actually did conduct a similar friendly fire incident, though it was on a far smaller scale, within the area of northwestern Kyiv at the very beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022. Near to the area of the Kyiv Zoo, a Ukrainian military convoy was passing through. It was about a company-sized convoy, and the territorial defense forces that had been raised that were civilian-based in that area actually believed that it was a Russian armed column that was trying to pass through that area and opened fire on the group. Significant casualties were seen. I believe it was around 30 to 40 killed out of about the 80 members of that company, so about half of the company was wiped out by the TDF, but at the same time, it was not seen that this was citywide, where there were firefights of this type happening quite literally in basically every corner of the city, including at the Presidential Palace in Kyiv. So if we were to apply that sort of a scenario to what's going on in Caracas, we have heard of firefights happening most everywhere in the city, a lot of them happening near to the Miraflores Palace, but we've also heard of other situations happening in streets within central Caracas here in the south. We've also heard of situations happening off to the west, the east, and basically everywhere else. So either they are insanely jumpy and they have basically no training and they do not identify friendly units, they just assume everyone around them is an enemy and shoot anything that moves, or this is an ongoing coup, which, to me, knowing how incompetent the Venezuelans are, it still seems more likely that this might be an active ongoing coup than it would be a friendly fire incident of some massive scale. But I do want to say, though, folks, take that with a grain of salt, because right now we are working with just the fact that there are firefights, and we're trying to make some sense out of the chaos, but it is a very chaotic situation, and my analysis right there may be entirely incorrect once we get further information on this situation.
Yeah, it seems like pretty much everybody that generally I follow as analysts, most people are running with the idea that this was some sort of misidentification of a drone flying over near the presidential palace in Caracas, and they're saying that the security forces simply panicked and that they started firing on their comrades. I'll be honest with you, that seems like it could be the case, but it really doesn't make much sense, really, because they did a bunch of air defense fire. They were clearly firing at something in the sky, which suggests they were firing at maybe a drone or an aircraft of some sort. But how did the fire on the ground start happening? Like, why did the security forces on the ground start firing at each other? That part doesn't make much sense to me. That's why I'm sort of having a hard time believing that explanation, because they're clearly in huge gun battles. They're bringing in ground reinforcements. And if it's a drone, why would you do that? That's kind of hard to believe.
I would have to say, it is really hard to believe. I just really don't know what would be going on at the moment right now on the ground. But we are trying our best, folks, to sparse through it and figure out exactly what it is, because no matter what theory we go with, folks, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense because nothing's entirely adding up. If it was a misidentified drone and it was an air defense friendly fire incident, why in the world did the infantry firefights happen in the streets? If it's a coup attempt, why were they firing into the sky? None of it's really adding up at the moment. And I have a feeling that whatever the answer is going to be, it's going to make the Venezuelans look even more so woefully incompetent than they already looked when their president was literally kidnapped out of Fort Tiuna just a couple of days ago. So I think that that's probably going to be the end result of this, is that Venezuela is probably going to look more so of a joke than anything after this is over, no matter what the reasoning is. But it is quite interesting to say the least.
Okay, so get this. I'm just seeing this being posted by a good friend of the channel, Geo Insider, on Twitter. Geo Insider is saying that according to information in Venezuelan state media, apparently we're getting statements from the Venezuelans' own media sources. What happened apparently over the last couple of hours was allegedly a friendly fire incident caused by confusion with surveillance drones. Apparently, it sounds like it might have been Venezuela's own drones that flew over. And they're also saying that ground security forces, unaware of the operation, mistook the drones for a threat and opened fire, prolonging the chaos. But I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but at the same time, though, not only did the ground forces fire into the sky at the alleged drone that was flying over, they also started firing at each other, from what we could tell in the images and also the videos coming out. So why are they firing at each other? I mean, that's the question to me. That's a big one.
Man, they sat there and said, "Oh, there's a drone in the sky. It's the Americans." And then another Venezuelan group came around the corner to go, "No, it's not a drone." And then that squad went, "Oh, Delta team, open fire!" And then just started firing at some guys. And I guess it just spread. Like, if that's the true story, apparently they all just got so scared they all thought the other squads that weren't in their line of sight and popped up into them were Delta Force, and they just started lighting everyone up, no matter who they were.
That's why. I mean, if that is actually what happened, I mean, that's crazy. They started apparently firing at their own people, not only firing at their own drone, if that report is accurate, but also firing at their own people. I mean, that's what you call being hopped up on edge to the extreme for them to be shooting at their own people.
Yeah, I would have to say, now if that is the real answer, folks, and that's apparently what the Venezuelan state media is going with, this is a huge, huge embarrassment. I'm not going to lie, folks. If you're going up against a military or an armed group like this, and they get so scared they just started shooting at each other in the streets, thinking that the other guys were Delta Force dudes, I mean, I'm not going to lie, this operation to kidnap Maduro was probably a lot easier than a lot of us would think, because I bet you all the security team guys started looking at each other and going, "Wait a minute, maybe you're Delta," and they all ended up shooting each other before Delta Force even arrived. But I don't know. That's what the Venezuelan government is currently going with right now. So it appears that, at least according to their reports, there is an inactive coup going. And generally, I wouldn't believe reports that would deny an active coup is not ongoing, because usually people say that to try and feign some form of stability, at least to the public. But at the same time, it seems as though we aren't getting any statements from an attempted coup group. And we're also not seeing any definitive action that has secured victory, at least against the existent government. So it's probably likely this may have just been the craziest friendly fire incident we've ever heard of in this century so far. So,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
And also, by the way, getting some more information here, we're hearing from FITUX Network, according to their sources on the ground, they're not really hearing any fire taking place anymore. That is gunfire, of course. And apparently the streets have calmed down. I am seeing conflicting reports of that. Some people are claiming that in some isolated areas inside the capital, there is apparently still some firefights happening. But right now we can't disprove it or prove it either way at this point. But at least according to our sources that we're hearing right now, it sounds like maybe it's calming down at least, if not completely over. But also, apparently we got a statement from the Venezuelan regime Ministry of Communications, and here's allegedly what they said, quote unquote. They said, "We welcome international media as reported, specifying that what happened in downtown Caracas was caused by drones flying over the city without permission and warning shots from the police, and there were no confrontations. The country is completely calm," which we know is complete bogus. We literally saw the pictures and videos of what happened. It was not calm whatsoever. But they're denying apparently that it was their drone flying over. So either they're trying to save face, or it was truly not a Venezuelan drone that they were shooting at. One or the other. There's a lot of conflicting information, even coming from the Venezuelan government right now, about what's taking place.
Yeah, I would have to say, it seems as though they're all kind of going with a story, though, that there was some sort of a friendly fire incident against drones, but this still isn't really explaining the whole infantry firefights on the ground side of things that happened during this time. So we still are not getting an answer on that at the moment, but it does appear that by all accounts, the U.S. was not involved in this whatsoever, so whatever was going on, it was on the ground. I also saw someone say, "You believe that government?" Right now, it's the best thing that we have to work with right now as far as statements on what's happening. I'm not saying I believe it outright, because quite obviously they are lying, saying that the situation is completely calm. I mean, there were Venezuelans just shooting each other in the streets just about 10 minutes ago, so Clearly, that's not the case, so they're lying to some degree. But it does appear that the whole entire thing stemmed, at least from what we know at the moment, from a friendly fire incident from the air defense forces. So if we're going with that, I will try and lay out the most plausible sort of sequence of events that we saw, is that the drones were spotted over the city. The air defense forces freaked out, and apparently they were ground air defense forces of a very light form, because we heard only heavy machine gun fire. So the heavy machine gun anti-aircraft units began to fire up into the sky at whatever was up there, which apparently was a Venezuelan drone. This then led to the ground forces hearing gunfire erupting all around them, like it did during the incident with Maduro, started to believe that there was another U.S. Special Forces raid being conducted. So then all of those units on the street, I would suppose, got incredibly panicked, and their squad leaders and platoon commanders apparently were also incredibly hyped up and on edge. So whenever any Venezuelan platoon or squad ran into another that they didn't initially see when this incident began, they just assumed that they might be Delta forces, because it's in the middle of the night. The only way that the city is illuminated is through street lights, and from a distance with a street light shining behind someone, all you see is the silhouette of a whole bunch of guys with guns. So then they must have assumed that those guys were Delta Force, and they started firing at them. And then the other squad that was getting fired at must have assumed that whoever was shooting at them was Delta Force, and then they started to shoot back. So I'm guessing that that's the situation that we saw that has happened inside of Caracas, but then that started to happen quite literally everywhere. So that is a little bit crazy, folks. They made this look like they were having an entire coup attempt from how scared everyone was, at least at this point. So we're hoping to clarify this even a little bit further, but considering that the U.S. government is not involved, the only statements we'll really be able to work off to even get an idea of kind of what was going on are going to be coming out of the Venezuelan government or some Venezuelan government office in Caracas. So I've seen some people saying maybe it's the cartels trying to clear out the city and take control, and that's extremely unlikely. Cartels, a lot like the mafia, like to generally operate in a much more low-key form, to where official government officers are in charge, but they generally get to run the show behind the scenes. It's never a good idea, at least for criminal underworld organizations, to take active control of civil administration, because that makes them a lot more high profile and easy to track than they would be otherwise. If you take over the control of a city, the cartel also has to make sure at that point that they are also maintaining public civil amenities, civil duties, and such things as that, and they also have to take direct control of the city government, a lot like the Taliban did after they took over. And that wouldn't be something that would be too good for them, because that would make it a lot easier for the CIA to openly track exactly what they're doing and then obliterate them. So they would generally know that it wouldn't be good to give themselves that large of a profile to where it would be easy to start obliterating them. So if they're around, they're staying incredibly low key and making sure that whatever happens, they don't really put targets directly on top of their head, and they play it a little bit more in the obscurity of the thing than the overtness of it.
Also, by the way, another thing that this situation tonight shows us is whatever happened, it's become extremely clear that the Venezuelan armed forces do not communicate well at all. They do not communicate with each other, and apparently there is no communication amongst the units that are currently protecting the capital city, which seems to indicate mass disorganization, also poor command structure. So if they hope to stand any chance against a U.S. intervention on the ground in Caracas or Venezuela as a whole, I'm not sure if they're going to hold up well. This is more evidence showing that they're not going to do very well whatsoever to a ground incursion, because they can't even communicate to let each other know, apparently, that they're shooting at their own aircraft flying over the sky, if that is indeed an accurate report. So once again, another huge strike for the credibility of the Venezuelan military, and they already were pretty much at rock bottom. So I'm not sure how much lower they can go.
I think there's a little further to go. there's a little extra that they can go. But I gotta say, folks, this was one hell of a crazy incident here at the moment. We got to watch the Venezuelans friendly fire each other for about an entire hour and a half. So that's something else. I think, folks, I gotta be entirely honest with y'all. I'm going to be straight up with you, Matthew. I don't really think that if the U.S. actually went into Venezuela, they're going to be able to create an effective armed resistance, because if this is how little they communicate at an official level, how well would they communicate at an unofficial guerrilla warfare style level? That would be practically non-existent.
Well, that will be different because, of course, there are cartels inside of Venezuela, and also it's very likely, in my personal assessment, that whatever consolidated Venezuelan force exists right now that's operated by the former Maduro government that's currently in place at the moment. They currently have the lady, I can't remember her name, I think it's Delcy, is currently in charge of the country. I think that force may end up disbanding pretty quickly, and they might just form like little cliques or basically little factions that end up sort of going out around the city and conducting guerrilla warfare. Because, I mean, clearly, if you can't communicate as a unified force, then you're going to go off with your buddies, basically, form little mini cliques, and then try to fight the military that way, which would seem to be the guerrilla warfare tactic that I was thinking they might do. So, there's still a huge threat of that, by the way. Just because the real military force can't get their shit together, that doesn't mean that the cartels aren't going to form little bands of factions and start fighting from basically really primitive tactics.
Yeah, I would have to definitely say that that's a possibility, but at the same time, I don't really think that's going to be too successful because if this is how poorly they communicate and how incompetent they are as a official armed force and also as an unofficial armed force with the armed citizenry in the city right now, I don't really think it's going to be getting a lot better from here. I don't really think that their situation getting worse off is going to make them fight any better or make them any more effective. I think the worse off they get, only the worse it's going to get for them, at least in this particular situation. Maybe they can conduct some isolated attacks against certain elements of a new Venezuelan government or the U.S. occupation in incredibly small number, but it's certainly not going to be anything that's wildly effective or efficient, and it probably will be dealt with pretty quickly once an attack happens. So,
Yeah.
with that in mind, though, go ahead.
Also, I'll be honest with you, folks. When I first saw this news breaking out, because we were following this literally the minute it broke out, we were watching this on X and all the other platforms. I was almost convinced for a second that it looked like maybe the current Maduro government was going to be overthrown internally. It looked like a coup. The initial videos showed people firing each other in the streets. Also, a motorcycle gang pulling up to the presidential palace. So, I mean, it looked like somebody was about to get overthrown from power, and that's what it looked like originally. And the air defense fire was just an added bonus, apparently, of just them firing at some random aircraft, which appears to be most likely their own drone that they were firing at. So I was getting very worried for a second that maybe some sort of Russian-aligned group or cartel inside of Venezuela was going to take over the Maduro regime, which would obviously be a bad thing because Russia could try to do something like that. That is possible, but thankfully it doesn't appear to be the case, at least for right now. But it's certainly becoming a shit show all the way around.
That's without a doubt. It is a shit show without a doubt at this point, folks. And I gotta say that at the moment, we are going to be covering any further breaking news that comes out. But it does appear that generally this situation may have begun and ended at this point, and we'll be trying to see if that is the case. But for now, we generally are seeing that the news has slowed down a great deal in this situation, and it appears that it may have been what actually was just explained by the Venezuelan government, which is that they just panicked and shot a whole bunch of their own dudes, and also shot up into the sky at basically nothing. So, that's interesting. And I also got to say, folks, where in the world are all these advanced air defense systems that they have? You know, like the VJ-27s, or the S-300s and the S-400s, or the Bukes, or the Pantsirs, that have their own target acquisition radars. Where in the world are those? Because if they had those, wouldn't they have been able to know that those drones were their own, and maybe they would have been able to communicate that to their ground air defense forces, that those are their own, don't fire at them? And if that is the case, and those radars were active and working, and they didn't communicate that, how poor is the training of the Venezuelan military to where they can't even communicate basic friend or foe identifier information to other units in the area? There's a lot.
I think they're out of commission. I think those air defense systems and also radars might be out of commission. We did hear the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense in the United States. He did mention today that apparently the Russian air defense systems did not hold up well whatsoever to the incoming U.S. attack that we saw the other night, which we can validate that ourselves. We saw it on camera. There was very little air defense. I think they used, what was it, a manpad against one of our helicopters at one point, if I have that correct?
Yeah, it was like an Igla or something like that they fired at a helicopter.
Yeah, something along those lines. But the major Russian air defense systems apparently failed. They weren't either in service, operating, or something, but they didn't do their job. And also, that Chinese radar that the Venezuelans were gifted a while back apparently didn't work very much either because they didn't even see it coming.
And also, I have to show y'all that radar because this is probably the more important thing that we can talk about in that entire raid for Maduro. And let me go see if I can find it for y'all here really quickly. It's the JY-27. I was calling it the VJ the entire night. So let me go get the JY radar, and let me show y'all this here really quickly. They actually call this, I'm not even kidding, folks, the wide mat. Matthew, you have been put into the news today quite generously, but this is the JY-27, aka the wide mat. The wide mat is a new advanced radar system that the People's Republic of China has produced that they claim is powerful enough and has a significant enough and fine-tuned enough capability that they actually can pick up and detect stealth aircraft, including the F-35 Lightning, from about, I believe it was like 200 or 300 miles away. When this claim was made by the Chinese about a year and a half to 2 years ago, when they first put this system in the service, I called BS on it on air immediately because there is no way in hell that the Chinese, with a budget a third the size of the US's, is able to produce a radar that is advanced, fine-tuned enough, and also refined enough to be able to pick up a stealth aircraft. US aircraft even have US radars currently even have a hard time doing that. So how in the world would the Chinese be able to produce something that's better than the United States with a third of the budget? And the answer is that they couldn't, because the Venezuelans had several of these, from what we understand. They had around 5 to 7 of them, from what we know in the public, and out of those 5 to 7 of them that they had, with all of the operators of those systems in Venezuela being trained in China, none of them picked up the F-35s that were literally hovering right over Caracas and dropping JDAMs on them. So clearly the Chinese stealth penetrating radars do not work at all. Apparently, they don't even work for the conventional aircraft that were in the area either, because apparently they didn't even pick up the in-air refueling tankers that were off of the coast, helping to prolong the air operation until the green light was given to conduct the strikes. So this radar didn't even pick up, from what we know, normal aircraft, much less stealth aircraft. And then on top of that, the S-300s and the S-400s, which the Russians have used endlessly in Ukraine, once again proved themselves to be absolutely dog water. They didn't pick up anything. We didn't even see any of them fire. And from what we know, none of them were destroyed, at least from the video and picture evidence that we got. We did confirm that a Buchem-2 was destroyed at the Hikoro Air Base out here east of Caracas, but that's not a S-300 and S-400. So apparently, the S-300s and the S-400s don't work. More importantly, their radars don't work.
Yeah, either they don't work or it's operator error to the extreme, one or the other. But I'll be honest with you. I'm not trying to give the equipment from China and Russia any benefit of the doubt, to be honest. But with how incompetent the Venezuelan military is, I would not rule out operator error. I also said that last night as well. For the equipment to fail this dramatically, I would almost lean toward the idea that it must be operator error or something of that effect. I see some people saying that maybe it was jammed, maybe the equipment was jammed, possibly. I'll be honest, I think it was a lot simpler than all the other explanations. I think that the Venezuelans simply don't know what they're doing. That could be a huge part in this. That's a 50-50 chance, in my opinion, because what are the odds that the Russian air defense fails? That's already pretty bad, although we have seen it fail before, but for it to fail completely, that's pretty horrific. And also, all the Chinese radar equipment to fail at the same time as well. That seems to me like a bunch of clowns trying to operate equipment they don't have any clue what they're doing with. So, I mean, I would give it a coin toss on that one.
But at the same time, though, in the last Ukrainian attack that was significant at the port of Novorossiysk, the entire Russian air coastal defense battery, which was based out of here, which had 3, from what we understand, batteries of S-400s, meaning that they had 3 radars, they had 3 target acquisition defense systems, and then they also had about 4 or 5 launchers per each of those radars, target acquisition systems, command vehicles, and also generator vehicles as well. So they had a huge grouping, a massive grouping, 3 entire air defense batteries of the S-400 here at Novorossiysk, and that in that entire attack, not a single one of them, from what we know, was able to fire off more than a single shot before they got hit and destroyed each. So those were also woefully incompetent in their abilities to be able to even defend the port of Novorossiysk, and those vehicles are produced in the Russian Federation, And the Russian Federation is trained specifically, and has been for decades, to be able to use the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems. So the fact that those didn't work in Novorossiysk was very telling in its own right, and also the fact that several dozen, I believe it's almost up towards 100 of these air defense batteries of the S-300 and S-400 variety have been destroyed over the war in Ukraine, on top of the 3 of them that were destroyed en masse at the Battle of Novorossiysk, or the air raid on Novorossiysk. It generally leads me to believe that the systems may not work, specifically their radar target acquisition systems, because for an air defense battery to work, their radars have to be operational and have to be able to pick up some form of an air target for the missile to be able to be fired at and then vectored towards. The fact that they're not really firing at all, even in Novorossiysk, each battery only got off 1 missile, or not even that, they basically got off nothing before they were destroyed, generally shows they weren't able to pick up any targets on their radars, and the fact that Venezuela has a load of these air defense systems and they didn't fire off a single shot either, may actually show us that the fault lies within the Russian radar systems that are attached to the S-300 and S-400 batteries. The missiles seem to work.
Well, what about this claim? I keep seeing multiple people say this in the audience. Is it possible, or is it even a capability that the United States military has to use the EA-18 Growlers and also the F-15EX, the electronic warfare planes? Can those knock out or jam those air defense systems and the radars that they use to target?
From what I understand, they can to some degree, but you can actually do a pretty lethal pairing with the 2 of these that is incredibly effective, which is the Growler as well as another aircraft that would be carrying what would we call it? Let's see. What are they called? Anti-radiation missiles. There we go. That's the name I was looking for. Because if you carry both of those together, AGM-88 HARMs along with the Growler, not only can the Growler disrupt and electronically interfere with the abilities of the air defense systems and their target acquisition radars, but you can also fire off an AGM-88 HARM, which is an anti-radiation missile that locks directly onto the radar pulses from that radar and can slam directly into it and knock it out, basically knocking out the entire air defense system. So it is likely, because we do know this, that a Buk M2 and a Pantsir were destroyed at a minimum in that raid, that when those systems were destroyed, there may have been some minimum communication to the fact of some air defense systems have been destroyed. It's highly likely they were hit by anti-radiation missiles, shut off the radars, and so everybody at the same time shut off their radars so that way they also wouldn't get hit by a harm, and then that's what basically opened up the airspace because we had suppressed the enemy air defense at that point.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know a whole bunch about the HARM missile. I was doing some quick research on it real quick. But so basically, the way I understand it here, apparently it hones in on enemy radar emissions, and then it apparently hits it. I mean, what does it do exactly? Is it a simple explosion that knocks it out, or is it something more than that?
It's basically just a direct explosion. It just hits right onto the radar system and explodes, disabling it.
So the only thing unique about the HARM missile is that the fact that it hones in on enemy radar emissions. That's what's unique about it.
Yeah, what is its specialty, basically.
Interesting. I thought maybe there was some sort of unique capability other than just the targeting system, but apparently it's a normal missile with a unique targeting system on the nose. So yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know those details, but that is interesting.
Yeah, so what would be done in an operation like this to try and get enemy air defenses to be suppressed, which is what SEAD stands for, SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense, is that they would fly in, say, generally in this sort of a situation, it wouldn't be anything like an F-35, because F-35s and F-22s have a very limited capacity for these sorts of missiles, so they would generally fly in something like an F-16. And F-16s can be loaded up with about, I believe, somewhere around 4 to 6 AGM-88 HARMs apiece. And the modern variants actually have the ability to start off these HARMs on a good note by pretty much giving them the exact location of where the radar pulses are coming from. Radars actually emit radiation, folks, but it's not the deadly kind of radiation that's going to melt your skin and, kill you from acute radiation poisoning, but it is a detectable form of radiation that's emitted by the radar pulses. The F-16s, specifically, I believe it's the F-16CJs that are specialized for SEAD operations, actually have a specialized sensor on board that can pick up those radar pulses and give a ping to the pilot, the operator of the aircraft, where those radar pulses are coming from. He can then parse through them and select which one he wants to fire a harm at, and then fire off one of his harms. That missile, once it's fired, almost operates like an AIM-120, to where it doesn't need the F-16 to be continuously pinging that radar source. The AGM-88 harm also has its own sensor on board, which can then vector laser directly into that radar pulse and fly right to it. Now, there is a lot, like, this is actually a very complicated form of warfare that we're talking about, and there's a million different counters or parries that you could do to try and deflect an immediate harm. One thing you could do is turn off the radar. The other thing that you can do is actually lock onto that harm if you get a radar signature and fire off one of your own air defense missiles right back at it to shoot that harm down. Then at that point, the air defense battery and then the aircraft that are conducting the seed operation are playing a game of who has more ammo. An air defense system only has a limited amount of ammo before it runs out, and generally a battery commander is going to be trained that they don't want to expend all of their ammo just trying to shoot down harms, because if they expend all of their ammo on anti-radiation missiles, they have nothing else to defend the capital with or other key infrastructure. So at some point, once they get to about a quarter of their air defense missiles used, sometimes even half, the battery commander is going to give the order to shut down the radar, because they can't continue to fire at these harms that are coming in, and they can't run out of ammo completely, because then they could screw over the entire air defense sector that they're in. So once they turn off that radar, that enemy air defense system is effectively suppressed. The radar is not on, and the radar has to be on for that air defense system to lock onto a target and to be able to fire off its air defense missiles at it. So then that opens up the airspace. Once you do that enough times within a specific area and enough radars are shut off, that actually gives you the ability to basically fly right in unopposed nearly, with seed operations and electronic warfare still being conducted in the background, just in case they try and turn a radar back on, to be able to conduct the airstrikes that you want to, like the ones we did in Caracas. So that's generally how that entire situation works, but that is still greatly simplifying all of the moving elements that are involved in that sort of an air operation, which is incredibly complicated, and that's probably the simplest explanation that I could give easily. But with that, we actually have another poll here about what's going on inside the country, and also we have more breaking news at this moment as well. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so jumping to our breaking news that's coming out right this second, we are not seeing any more videos showing any type of firefights or gunfire right now inside of Caracas. So at the moment, I think we can say with some certainty that it looks like the overall situation is likely concluded at this point. So we'll have to wait and see if that is indeed the case. But we do have a different piece of breaking news right now. It sounds like the Venezuelan opposition leader, who is currently holed up inside of Europe right now, Maria Corina Machado, she is saying that Delcy Rodriguez, the current new president of Venezuela that replaced Maduro, is an ally of Russia, China, and Iran, and is not to be trusted. Also, apparently, Maria Corina Machado says that she plans to return to Venezuela as soon as possible. So she is trying to get her foot back in the door after she was basically sidelined by the U.S. officials to return to Venezuela. But I mean, I'm not sure if that's really feasible at the moment. She's saying that, but that's not really feasible because Venezuela is still controlled by the Maduro regime. Maduro's not there, but his goons are in charge. So if she returns, I don't think that's going to be good for her if she returns right now. So it sounds like she's desperate to get back in the running, essentially. So she's trying to keep herself and her name out there in the press. But, I mean, between the Maduro government that's still in charge of Venezuela, also the U.S. saying that apparently she's not fit to serve or something to that effect, then I'm not sure really what she's doing at this point. But she's still trying to make her name known, that she's still trying to take charge.
And that is fairly interesting to hear. It does appear that the Venezuelan opposition leader currently in Norway is still trying to position themselves to be the opposition to the Venezuelan government, which I have to say that it's incredibly bizarre that the U.S. has sidelined the opposition leader, considering that the opposition leader actually has momentum inside of Venezuela and public support. And on top of that, just won the Nobel Peace Prize for 2024 for her work in opposition against the Maduro regime. So I have absolutely no clue why in the world she was sidelined. That is an absolutely horrendous sort of a foreign policy call. And on top of that, folks, another thing that I have to get to is that, yes, the U.S. has to conduct actions within other countries in the interest of the United States. If there's an anti-American, pro-Chinese government inside of Venezuela like the Maduro regime is, then there is a reason for us to go down there and take care of that and overthrow that government. But at the same time, once we overthrow a government, we can't get involved in the internal affairs of the country and tell the Venezuelans what's going to go and what's not going to go. Maria Corina Machado has an incredibly great deal of public support behind her inside of Venezuela, And for that reason, if the Venezuelan people want her to be the leader of Venezuela, then she should be the leader of Venezuela, whether we think she's strong or not, because that will be publicly popular within Venezuela. And if we allow the Venezuelan people to choose their own leader, they're obviously going to like the United States a lot more for that, because we actually have the ability to respect them as a people and let them choose their own destiny and their own path from here. So that's what I would say about that. I don't know why we're doing that, and we're really putting the opposition leader in a really tough position, because now they're basically going to have to put themselves in extreme jeopardy by returning at this very moment to try and see if they can form some sort of active resistance to the Venezuelan government and see that it is finally removed from power, instead of whatever is going on right now, which is still quite murky. But we actually have significant breaking news coming out of this moment. What do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so let's hold off on Venezuela for just a second. We are hearing early reports. This is about Thailand and Cambodia. So, switch mental gears for just a second to that whole situation. The Thai army is claiming right now that a Cambodia border strike has wounded a soldier, and apparently the truce has been violated yet again. So that is the early report right now. The Thailand-Cambodia situation is apparently firing back up as of about 5 minutes ago that we're hearing about. We do not have visual evidence showing the strike as of yet. I do expect that footage to come out probably in the next hour or so. But Thailand, Cambodia, it was believed that that situation was tended to. Now it appears to be firing right back up. So if the Cambodians truly conducted a border strike on Thailand, I don't know why they did that. They were getting their asses whooped before that ceasefire was agreed to, the last one that just went into effect. So I don't know what Cambodia is up to here. That would be ridiculously stupid to start that back up again on their behalf. So we'll have to see, but that's crazy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, who would have ever expected that one? Like, in the middle of us covering the friendly fire incident that just happened in Caracas, now we're hearing that the Thai-Cambodia war is going to start up for the third time. So that's something. And also, I don't know why, because the Thai were generally winning when the casino war came to an end. And to explain the situation, for those who may not paid a great deal of attention to what was going on in this area, let me explain to y'all what has been going on in this area that's led up to this. So first off, we did hear that the Cambodians had apparently planted mines on patrol paths on the Thai side of the border, which led to some Thai soldiers being wounded and injured, which then led to the Thai conducting strikes against Cambodia in retaliation. This whole fight started over this little temple on the border called the Pray of a Heart Temple, which is actually right here, which is significant. Basically, the best way I can explain, it's basically for tourist dollars, and also who in the world is it more culturally significant to, the Thai or the Cambodians. So that's really the entire reason why the first war started. So the first war started, and the Thai and Cambodians went at it, and the Thai were, of course, wiping the floor, and then the U.S. stepped in the middle of it and basically threatened both of them to an inch of their lives that they better make a peace or else. So then Thailand and Cambodia went to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur, and signed the Kuala Lumpur Accords of 2024, which started the what we called the 7-Eleven War at that time. The reason why the first war is called the 7-Eleven War is because the Cambodian army conducted massive amounts of indiscriminate rocket attacks inside of Thailand, and generally there were significant civilian casualties, and almost every single time they always happened at a 7-Eleven. So the first war was called the 7-Eleven War for that reason. After the Malaysia Accords were put into place, the peace was incredibly strained already due to the massive amount of external U.S. pressure that was put on both sides to end the conflict. And we then saw that, according to Thai reports, the Cambodians, which we can confirm this here on air, we had video proof of this, the Cambodians conducted attacks on a forward operating base of the Thai army near to the border at Ubon Ratchathani, killing several and wounding others, which then started what we now call the Casino War. The Thai immediately told the United States to get bent, and that they were not listening to the United States no matter what threats they made against Thailand to stop the conflict, and they were going to continue the conflict until the Cambodians no longer posed a threat. The Thai Air Force then went on to conduct a significant airstrike campaign throughout the entirety of the second war that just concluded a little while ago against Cambodian casinos, literally obliterating basically every single one near to their border area, which the Thai alleged were being used by the Cambodian army as operating posts or command stations. That's what dubbed the second war the Casino War, and generally the Thai Thai were having the upper hand advantage in basically all engagements and firefights along the border with the Cambodians during this conflict. The Thai actually issued a statement to the Cambodians about how they could negotiate a ceasefire with Thailand, which was that the Cambodians would have to announce a time that the ceasefire would go into place. Thailand would immediately accept that. They would then have to ensure that within that period of time, basically all firing would stop, and we also would we would hear then later that the Thai and the Cambodians would have to make active concerted efforts through both of their diplomatic institutions to actually start working on a meaningful ceasefire and then a long-term peace treaty. That was what ended the casino war, because the Cambodians did announce a ceasefire time. The Thai then accepted it, and they had a meeting on the border with their government officials to where they signed a brand new ceasefire that lasted for a 72-hour period, and then was extended a little bit farther, which leads us up to today. Now the Thai are saying that the Khmer Rouge, or basically the Khmer armed forces, have conducted another armed attack against the Thai army, which has led to wounded, and apparently this will most likely, based off the prior precedents, start a whole other third war between Thailand and Cambodia as a result of this attack that we're hearing of right now. So that is the whole lay of the land, folks, to give you all the breakdown in between the two countries and what's going on with them. And now we've heard that apparently this is going to be the start of a brand new third war, which we'll probably come up with an interesting name for later once we figure out what's going on inside the conflict. But with that, I hope that does address that breaking news development well on air, because now we're hearing that that war will be starting up again as well. 2026 is starting off strong, but we actually do have some more information coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so right now, I'm looking at Flight Radar 24, by the way. I was doing a quick scan of the Venezuelan airspace to see what's happening over their country. Right now, no commercial jets. Well, actually, let me take that back. There's one that just appeared right there. It must have just turned on its transponder, actually. So there's apparently one here at some airport on the coast. It looks like, I mean, the Caracas airport, that is. But there's another aircraft I want to bring your attention to real quick. There is currently a Cessna Grand Caravan flying around the Colombian area near the border with Venezuela, right down there. I'm not sure what this is, by the way. It could be a privately owned aircraft, or this could be some sort of Colombian surveillance aircraft. I'm not totally sure. It appears to be doing circles around an area here near the Venezuelan border. Not sure really what that is, but Enforcer, are you aware of what Colombia uses for their surveillance aircraft?
Mofongo. Man, I actually don't know. Let me go and try to figure that out. Oh my god.
It's flying a strange pattern. That's why I was wondering, because I'm like, it seems to be going in a pattern here near the border, at least. I see some people saying maybe it's something like the cartels. We don't know that, obviously, but I mean, it's running a really weird pattern.
Let's take a gander, folks.
Also, by the way, I don't think the cartels turn their transponders on, by the way. I don't think they abide by the rules quite like that. I think they go, they fly in the dark.
Holy moly. What an ancient relic. They actually operate the Kafir, which is an Israeli modified Mirage.
That's crazy.
That's insane, actually. This is like, folks, this is like 1960s, 1970s vintage. Like, that is crazy. So, let's see here. They also operate the Basler BT-67, which is a modified DC-3. Those were used in the Second World War, if y'all don't know. They also have the A-37 Dragonfly. These are actually pretty neat. They're actually U.S. made, and I think they were really cool strike aircraft, but for their time, not in the modern day. And they also have Super Tucanos, which they have about 24 of. Now, if we look towards their reconnaissance aircraft, we are looking for a Cessna Grand Caravan, or a C-208, and they have 6 of them. So it is possible that this could be a Colombian Air Force Cessna Caravan.
Aha, that is interesting. So they do have something at least similar to it, a Grand Caravan perhaps. So we're not told on this thing right here. It does not have a registration listed on Flight Radar 24. It also does not have a launch point or an end point for the flight either. So a big lack of information about this, which made me wonder what it was doing, and also flying that strange pattern over what appears to be, I'm trying to zoom in here to get the text on it. It appears to be the Park National Natural L something. So it's doing circles there. So not totally sure what is going on with that. But Venezuela, though, Venezuela just has about 2 commercial flights in its airspace right now, and that is just about it.
Folks, I gotta tell y'all, the U.S. shivers when a Cessna Caravan takes off and conducts a surveillance route. That's incredibly scary, folks. Y'all know what Cessna Caravans are capable of? mass destruction. Actually, as a matter of fact, I hear that the White House is currently looking into, Matthew, declaring Cessna caravans as a weapon of mass destruction.
That's scary, honestly. That's something else. The Colombians are getting into the big boy leagues now. They're sending up aircraft to do surveillance. It's brand new.
And surveillance in a place where basically nothing is going on because nobody lives there. So I don't know
Oh
what's.
well, I'm sure somebody lives there, but they're probably not well known.
I mean, there's like nobody out here, man. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like,
Oh,
there's
I know
like
some
some.
people that are probably out there. I tell you what, there's some people out there that like to. They're not scientists. You might be able to call them mad scientists, perhaps, but there's some people out there.
Well, I mean, they're cooking, but not like Gordon Ramsay is what you're trying to say. Like that's what we kind of know. But I mean, still at the same time, though, like I'm saying, like population density wise, these are like the types of towns you see out here. They're literally like non-existent. So there's not a lot of people out there. And on top of that, do you think that Colombia would be trying to look at the cartels like Tren de Aragua inside of Venezuela when they have their own Contras inside of Colombia that are en masse basically everywhere east of Bogota?
I mean, you never really can tell out here. This is the Wild West out here at this point. It's just a free for all. The government, for example, the government in Colombia says they have control over their country, but we all know, just like Mexico, Venezuela, etc., there's a whole bunch of government forces that are cartels that also have a huge say in how things run down there. So it's hard to tell.
Oh, we also have a Colombian Air Force helicopter that's airborne as well, near to the area of the Florencia Airport, and currently appears to be flying over the jungles in that area. So we don't know what that one's doing, but it is traveling at a altitude of around 1,850 feet at a speed of about 97 knots. So
You know they're scared. You know the Colombian government is scared to death right now because the Colombian president is still making wild statements. He's basically repeating the exact same lines that Maduro said before he was captured. He's saying, "Come get me, you cowards! You can't do this. You can't do that." I'm like, that guy is top tier, Dom. Also, I think he's the guy that came to the United States and was yapping in the streets against the U.S. government when he was here in New York last time. So the Colombian president has a very low IQ, apparently, because whether or not it's right or wrong, they literally just did an operation, a very masterful operation. Nab Maduro has taken him back and he's going to face trial very, very soon. And now the Colombian guy is basically putting a target on himself for the U.S. government to go do the same thing to him. So, I mean, how much more stupid can you get?
Honestly, folks, it was absolutely stupid when he came to New York City and he went to the United Nations because it was a session of the United Nations that was going on at that time, and then he got out of the building, wandered over here to this street, and then went to a crowd of people who were protesting. He said, "Give me the microphone." And then he sat there and said, "Hey, the U.S. Army ought to pick up their guns and overthrow the U.S. government. Yeah, that would be cool." It's like, is this guy like an idiot or something? You don't do that when you're in someone else's country, like unless you're asking for trouble. And then the guy was actually expelled right after that. He had his visa revoked and he had to go. So then he had to go back to Colombia. And since then, he has been continuing on with the absolutely crazy statements. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I don't really know about threatening war with basically every country around us like China does. But one thing I will say is that the Colombian president really isn't making himself any good position to stand on if the U.S. did do something against him. Because, I mean, the guy, for one, was in America calling for the direct overthrow of the U.S. government in the United States, an armed overthrow at that, which you usually do not do unless you're demanding a major diplomatic incident to ensue, no matter who's in charge. And then he goes back to Colombia and basically sits there and runs his mouth as much as he can about anything and everything. Usually taking positions that, I would be entirely honest with y'all, lack any common sense no matter what people are saying or what people think about the guy. So, he's not really putting himself in a good spot. I'll just be entirely frank on that one. But we do have more breaking news coming out right now. So what do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so let's twist everybody's brains one more time and jump back to a different part of the world, back in Cambodia and Thailand. We have gotten official confirmation, this is from the Thai army, that Cambodia has violated the ceasefire. So it's no longer just an early report. It is a confirmed report that Cambodia has apparently injured at least one Thai soldier, at least, with mortar rounds that were fired into the Chong Bak area in front of Hill 469. And of course, we all know about Hill 469. That's a great place. And apparently the mortar round hit there and took out a Thai soldier, at least severely injured him with shrapnel wounds, according to the poster that we have here. So apparently we're being told to expect escalations. That's coming from the Thai army, and they're going to ramp things up yet again. So apparently the 6th of January, the war is starting right back up once again.
So I'm actually reading here where in the world the Second Army area is, and it actually is responsible for let's see, the northeastern quadrant, and I'm trying to see the exact geographical parameters of that. And they are making it incredibly hard to find this stuff, folks, because I don't know what it is, but trying to geolocate anything in Thailand, Cambodia is basically impossible. From what I can tell, though, they are headquartered in an area that would generally give them control of the regions between Buri Ram all the way down to Trot. So everything from about, let me see here if I can show you all this with a line. Everything through this area of the border, about right there, that is the Second Army area, at least from what I can tell. So that seems to be where some sort of an attack has been conducted with mortar fire, and if I had to take an assumption at where that is, that's probably around the city of Krong Poi Pet. We don't have the exact information at the moment, but that's generally where the heavy fighting was at the latter part of the casino war, so I would assume that there's a heavy Cambodian buildup in that area, and that's where the mortar attack was most likely conducted. So the Thai Second Army area has confirmed that apparently they did come under a mortar fire, and there was a soldier that was wounded as a result. So now it appears that they are going to be generally getting back into the third war at this point. I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. I don't really think there's going to be an end of the fighting between these two sides until one clearly wins over the other, because every single time that the Thai and Cambodians negotiate a ceasefire, at least from what we've seen, the Cambodians break it just about every single time. As a matter of fact, the first World War started because the Cambodians planted mines on the Thai side of the border, and a soldier stepped on one and then got blown up. So, I got to be entirely honest with y'all at this point. It sounds like the Cambodians are just instigating the Thai at every chance they get, and the Thai basically will just have to steamroll Cambodia in a full-blown war to probably achieve any meaningful result and end the fighting for any long period of time.
And isn't that wild? That's such a wild thing to do on Cambodia's part, because Thailand was very generous. Thailand negotiated. They took the initiative, and they were the ones with superior firepower. They took the initiative to tell Cambodia, let's put aside our differences. Let's end this thing and just put this to a stop, because the Thai didn't want to necessarily destroy Cambodia. They were on track to do that because they have air superiority. So Cambodia was in some deep trouble. So they negotiated the peace. And now Cambodia is going to make an action so stupid as to restart the conflict after the Thai just showed some fantastic goodwill on their part to bring it to an end. I mean, I think the Thai might go all the way this time. I'm not sure why they wouldn't, because apparently Cambodia can't contain themselves.
Yeah, I would say so, and it's absolutely crazy, folks, because the Thai had the firepower advantage, and then the Thai put out the easiest terms. I mean, literally, it was like non-existent terms for the Cambodians to end the fighting that they were losing. It wasn't anything insane. Like with the Russians, they say, we won't even have a ceasefire, it's just a peace agreement, and you're going to have to accept our demands or else. And you cannot contradict any of our demands, you just have to accept them at face value or else. The Thai, on the other hand, went, we are beating y'all's asses. And the Russians aren't even beating Ukraine's ass. They're generally losing, if we consider everything all together. They're generally losing on the day-to-day. And even still, the Russians play hardball. The Thai were winning against Cambodia, and then they gave them the easiest terms. They just said, give us a time and date that the ceasefire is going to go in place, and make sure that your forces are in line and understand when that ceasefire goes into place, and we'll basically just agree to that off the bat, and this thing will end for 72 hours. And then they even extended it afterwards. It's like, why in the world do the Cambodians keep attacking the Thai? It's absolutely insane. And I'll be honest with y'all, the U.S. doesn't need to get involved in this situation at all. This is basically just between the two of them. But the Thai, if they have any sense, are probably going to steamroll the Cambodians here soon to try and end this thing for a good minute. But anyways, with that in mind, we do understand that a lot of people have been talking about the situation ongoing in Venezuela at the moment, just to get us back to that, considering that we now have two fairly large incidents now happening on air, both in Thailand and Cambodia, and also in Venezuela. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to be happening next in Venezuela. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So, what is likely to next happen in Venezuela in sequence? Because, of course, all this stuff could happen eventually, but what is likely to happen next? 41% said a government deal with U.S. officials will happen in Venezuela and things will be smoothed over, while 27% said a new round of U.S. strikes is coming next. 18% said a cartel takeover of the Maduro government, and 14% said a Russia-China backed overthrow of the current Maduro regime. So, this is a tricky one, as I like to say all the time. This is indeed a tricky one because right now the Venezuelans are on such tense terms with their own military. It's hard to tell where this is going to go. One thing it does tell us is they're probably inclined to take a government deal with U.S. officials. If they're this scared, and right now the second round of strikes hasn't even started yet, then they're probably going to crack under the pressure and probably come to a deal. So I am with the 41%. I think something will be worked out before a new round of U.S. strikes takes place. So once again, I'm with the 41%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm with the 41% as well. I think there's probably going to be some form of a negotiation that the Venezuelan government will try and conduct with the United States. But at the same time, it may not be with the current vice president of Venezuela. It may be with someone else, or it may be with the current vice president, or it may even be with the opposition leader at this point. It's really hard to say. But I have a feeling that the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, is actually about to attempt to try and do something to see that her side is actually put into power instead of allowing basically a group of dictators to remain in power under the Maduro regime. So I hope that does address that the best that we can. And also, I've seen some people talking tonight about the situation with Venezuela and how what the U.S. did to Maduro was oh so wrong and everything. And I was actually thinking, folks, about a couple of things that Venezuela has done in recent times that generally don't make them that nice of a country. And I'm not talking about the cartels. I'm about to actually bring y'all through some other stuff that they've done and other things that have happened that generally ought to give y'all the idea that no matter what justification Maduro was overthrown or removed from power for, you really can't disagree with it all too much, just to be completely honest. One is that Venezuela invaded and annexed 2/3 of the neighboring country Guyana just last year. We basically didn't cover that because there wasn't really a lot to cover. They basically marched into an empty rainforest region and took control of it, but that's why this giant dashed line exists right now in the middle of Guyana. If I show y'all an official map, let's see, official Venezuelan map of Venezuela. Let me see if I can show you all this right here. Let's see. Nope, it's not this one. We need to find the one where they included Guyana. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. This is the new official map of Venezuela right here. And you'll notice that that giant part of Guyana is actually, according to the Venezuelan government, a part of their territory. So what they did was basically what Russia did to Ukraine. They just invaded a neighboring country to try and achieve their own interests. So when people sit there and go, oh, what the U.S. did is wrong to Maduro, I mean, he was just sitting down there eating his empanadas and acting a fool. He commanded the armed invasion of a neighboring country to take control of its oil fields that had just been discovered inside of those rainforests. So, really tough to make him sound like he's a nice guy, considering that he conducted an armed invasion of a neighboring country. Additionally, in 2024, which we actually did cover this, Maduro won in an absolute landslide in the domestic election, which was complete BS because he was losing the entire night up until they shut off all of the news stations for about an hour or two, and then when they turned back on, every single one of them was saying that Maduro was leading by massive margins in every single part of the country, and that he had basically won completely. This pissed off everyone in Venezuela, and there were riots going on in most of the major cities, and what the Venezuelans did next was unbelievable, because they called in the Iranian IRGC and also the Wagner from Russia, which was still kind of around at that point, to put these people down. And they started firing in the crowds and whatnot to get these people to disperse. So they completely flipped an election. Also, let me go and pull up this really quickly to show you all this as well. Let's see, nations that recognize 2024 Venezuela election. And let me go get the map of this here really quickly. These are the countries. Let me see here. Let me go get this. These are all of the countries in the world that either stated that Venezuela's election was legitimate or that Venezuela's election was not legitimate. And I want y'all to notice who in the world are the countries that stated that the election of Maduro was a legitimate one in 2024. Matthew, who in the world's in green? Do you notice something about them, like a reoccurring pattern here?
Oh, and what is that?
This map represents in red everyone who did not recognize the legitimate election of Maduro in 2024, and the groups in green are the countries that recognized Maduro as a legitimately elected leader in 2024.
So it's pretty much just bricks.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just bricks. It's Cuba, Nicaragua. I believe that would be, let's see. Let me make sure that I'm getting this correct. Honduras as well, which we all kind of know how those two countries lean. Along with what appears to be, let me make sure I get that one correct. Bolivia. I was about to say Paraguay or Paraguay, which would be incorrect. And then Syria, which was under the Assad regime at the time, now deposed. Serbia, Belarus, Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Madagascar, and China. Those were the only countries on the planet. Also, let's see, that would be. Oh, what the hell is that? That's a part of Morocco. It's the Western Sahara, but it's not really Morocco. But beyond that, those were the only countries in the world that actually legitimately recognized the election of Nicolas Maduro. So if you notice here, nobody in the Western world, not a soul, recognized Maduro as a legitimately elected leader in 2024, except for Russia and China and Iran. And who in the world are the enemies of the United States? Russia, China, and Iran. So they're the only countries, basically, that recognize this guy as a legitimate leader, while everyone else in the world clearly saw that the guy just rigged the election to win in the most crooked way imaginable, and then they stated that very openly. And then the Venezuelans just kept on going on with life. So if we're to put it in this sort of a perspective, how in the world can anyone say that it was wrong for the U.S., no matter what, whether it was for oil, whether it was to topple drugs, or whether to remove Chinese and Russian influence from the Americas, whichever way you want to spin the yarn, how in the world can we actually say that what we did with Maduro was a bad thing, considering that he commanded the invasion of a neighboring country, Guyana? He also completely rigged the election in 2024, and when people actually went out into the streets to protest and then riot about it, he then called in foreign mercenaries to come and shoot the people that were saying that his election was not legitimate. I mean, it's not like he was a great guy or anything. And on top of that, basically every other Western nation, except for the British, which pretty much made a non-statement, basically everyone else, including Macron, President Zelensky, and others, were entirely behind the idea of seeing the Maduro regime removed from power. So, you know, I would have to say it's really hard for people to make it out to be like Maduro was an innocent man. I mean, Maduro literally just invaded the neighboring country and completely rigged the election in 2024. So, not really the greatest of guys. So, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I could show y'all there. And with that, Matthew, do we have any more news coming out at this moment?
Okay, so I'm currently doing a scan for breaking news, and right now I'm currently doing some looking here. Also, by the way, I found this a little bit strange. We do cite Flytex Network quite a bit. They're very reliable, by the way. That's why we cite them all the time. I just saw that RT just apparently cited them too, which is insane. That is insane work right there. I'm not sure if RT even knows that Flytex Network is not necessarily on their side. I don't think, or at least I don't think so. But that's crazy right there. You can see it on our Twitter page. That's wild. I just tagged them in it so that way they could see it. That's crazy work.
That's absolutely crazy. Also, someone said, "Glad you guys are coming around to the truth." Well, no, that's the truth. I mean, Maduro is a bad guy. He's a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. But the thing is, though, is that while he's a bad dude, nabbing him, like, it's not a bad thing to nab the guy, but nabbing him really didn't do anything to get us what we wanted in Venezuela, say. Because now the vice president's the president, and the entire Maduro regime, except for him, is still intact inside of Venezuela. So yeah, we did nab him, and it's great, and it was a super cool military operation, but at the same time, it really didn't achieve what we needed. What would have achieved what we have needed would basically be an armed intervention in Venezuela, if that's what we were wanting to do, to topple the entire government from the ground up, and then build a new one in its stay. That's what we would generally want to do, and that's what would have been wildly successful. But right now, we basically, like, if you looked at it, the Venezuelan government is a pyramid. So we took the headstone off of the very tip top of the pyramid off, but the rest of the pyramid is still there. If you want to get rid of that government structure, you have to completely raise that pyramid to its foundation and then rebuild it on top of the foundation that exists. And we haven't really done that. So that's why we're like, you know, the nuance here is it was a really cool military operation, and Maduro was definitely not a good dude, so it's not like it's a misfortune that this happened to him, but at the same time, it didn't achieve what we wanted. So there's kind of the nuance involved there that makes this more of a gray area than anything. So And also, I saw someone say, it was breaking international law. Yeah, but he broke international law by one, shooting on his own people after rigging his election, and then on top of that, invading the neighboring country Guyana and annexing 2/3 of it. So, people sit there and say, well, this breaks international law. Technically, it would break international law for us to conduct preemptive strikes against Russia, but I don't really see a lot of people arguing against that, especially in the modern day, with Russia looking like they're about to invade NATO. I don't really see a lot of people bucking the idea that we might want to conduct preemptive strikes against Russia, which technically would also be in violation of international law. A lot of people actually say that we ought to just go in and conduct a strike on Putin in Moscow right now and just wipe the guy out, which also would violate international law technically, but I don't see a lot of people arguing against it. And on top of that, the number one thing is that international law doesn't count for nothing. International law in general is something to follow in forms of the Geneva Convention on the Rules of War, but when it comes to our actions against other states and other states conducting against actions of others, basically nobody follows it at all. Like, nobody in the world does. So we're supposed to say we can't topple the Venezuelan government, which is clearly pro-Russian and Chinese and posing a major strategic threat to the United States, because that will break international law. But if that country wants to invade its surrounding neighbors like Guyana, then we're just going to turn a blind eye and complain about it, but we're going to do nothing to fix the problem. Basically what the
Also, speaking of Guyana, you just mentioned that. It looks like Guyana sent up their own Cessna Grand Caravan right now to check on the situation, by the way. Check flight radar 24. We have also, you might have to maybe refresh. There it is, actually, right there. So, yeah, look at that. Look at that. They've got their own. I think this does suggest, and once again, we can't say it for a fact, but I think this suggests that these countries, Guyana and most likely Colombia, are using these Cessnas for government surveillance of the border, or at least somewhere in the area. So I'm not sure. This one's not really close to the Venezuelan border that we can tell, but I mean, apparently it's surveillance.
Yeah, but that's quite interesting right there. That's very interesting. Guyana really doesn't even have a military that much, so this is probably like the peak of what they have, actually, to be straight up. So that's fairly interesting, and we're going to see what comes out of these surveillance flights, but oh, wait a minute. The Colombian one's disappeared. Apparently it's turned off its transponder again. So that one's, sneaking through Colombian airspace right now, but the Guyanan one is about to take off at the airfield right now. So
Oh, it's taken off.
yeah, it's actually on the tarmac still. It hasn't even taken off yet.
Interesting. I wonder where it's heading. I wonder if it is heading toward the Venezuelan border.
Yeah, I would wonder, actually. That is a good question. Actually, technically, the Venezuelan border is right here down this river in the middle of Guyana at the moment, because the Venezuelan military is actually in the other part of Guyana. So once it takes off, it's literally on the border, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much, actually. So yeah, I guess they are.
Yeah, so with that, I hope that addresses that situation fairly well, that progressing development. And also, I've seen some people in the chat talking about, well, it's ridiculous that the U.S. does this with international law and that. Look, folks, I'd like here's the breakdown. I said this the other night. Whatever the United States has to do within reason to secure its national security against our adversaries is what it has to do. International law does not count for anyone else. China's going to invade Taiwan, and they don't really care what people think about international law. Russia invaded Ukraine, and they didn't care what people thought about international law. They're preparing to invade the whole of NATO, and they're getting ready to once again violate international law on multiple different nation states, but they don't care. So then we're going to allow, for some reason, because we're going to act like we're the Boy Scouts, we're going to allow the Russians and the Chinese to build a fortress to expand their sphere of influence directly in the Americas. And for some reason, we are supposed to hold back and stop ourselves from stopping that development that is clearly a detriment to our interests, when nobody else in the world ever follows international law and they do whatever they want. So basically, we're tying our hands behind our back while we're allowing the evil nations of the world, the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, to do basically whatever they want, violating international law every week, but we can't do nothing to stop them. That's a position to where we end up living under a Russian or Chinese aligned puppet state, which I'm not really a big fan of. But anyways, with that, I hope that it does address that well. And in the meantime, we actually do have a poll at the moment on what NATO is probably focusing on at this moment right now. And Matthew, what the dog doing? And what do you think of the dog's doing?
Okay, so this is more of a zoomed out sort of question right here because the overarching thing here is we are seeing military escalations and wars breaking out literally 24/7. It's not a rare occurrence anymore for wars to break out. We literally just had a new one break out tonight with Thailand and Cambodia. So that happened in the midst of the Venezuelans lighting each other up because they mixed up their own drone with a enemy attack. So we got a lot of stuff going on, and that's just a couple of them. There's still more than that, plenty more than that happening. So, with all these recent escalations, what is NATO mainly focused on doing right now? And it looks like 44% said NATO is positioning for global conflict, while 24% said they're focused mainly on managing NATO ally tensions internally, and 20% said they're focused on diplomacy and de escalation. So, I'll be honest, at this point, they're beyond de escalation. NATO is well aware, based on their own intelligence briefings, that war is inevitable at this point, and they're simply preparing for it. So they're trying not to trigger it too early because NATO still has to prepare and also build up our armaments to be able to be ready for a global conflict. But there's also a second major issue. The United States is throwing a monkey wrench in the whole situation because right now they are threatening to take Greenland, which is obviously messing with Denmark, which is a NATO member. So they're also trying to manage NATO ally tensions while they're also positioning for a global conflict. So Europe has two prospects right now. They're potentially going to go to war with not only Russia, but potentially the United States, which is insane. Hopefully, the United States backs off of that so that way we can all focus on the real enemy, which is the Axis powers, which is Russia and China, North Korea, and Iran. But maybe the USA will simply, have some sense all of a sudden. But I will say, it's a mix of managing tensions and also positioning for global conflict. It's a mix of those two. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I'm with the 45%. They're most likely positioning for a global conflict as their main priority right now, especially against the Russians. But also on top of that, they have the whole sideshow going on with what's happening with Greenland, where the U.S. is threatening to annex Greenland, although it's a Danish territory, which by treaty, the U.S. has basically an unlimited access to, which is the reason why it's really weird that we even want to annex it, because we basically already control it. And that's something that a lot of people are not understanding when they talk about this topic, is that the U.S. is not stopped from being in Greenland. As a matter of fact, we are in Greenland in a massive way. In a humongous way. Basically, most of our detection systems that look upwards into the Arctic, they're in Greenland. And they're in Greenland because we have a treaty with Denmark that allows us to be there. And allows us to be there in basically any capacity that we want. All we have to do is just ask the Danish, which isn't even really asking them, it's more so telling them, hey, we're going to put more guys up there. And they basically give it a rubber stamp and say that's okay. So we basically already have Greenland. So it does not make any sense at all, folks, that we have to take Greenland. Because on top of that, Denmark's in NATO. So because it's in NATO, it's basically already a part of our larger sphere of influence. That's why we're there, and that's also why it wouldn't matter whether we have it or the Danish have it. So let the Danish have it, because they've had it for literally hundreds of years. I think it's been about 700 years roughly or so that they've had Greenland, and just let them have it. We're there, they're there. They've already boosted the amount of defense that they provide to Greenland by billions of dollars, and it has been deemed sufficient prior by the U.S. itself. So I don't really know why we're revisiting the whole idea of taking Greenland, considering that there is no strategic pertinence to physically controlling Greenland as a U.S. territory, and not only that, it only comes with the loss. We either alienate ourselves entirely from NATO, or we sour our relationship with NATO so badly that it may as well be a non-existent defense organization at that point, which is not going to be beneficial to the United States in any perspective whatsoever. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, someone just said Monroe Doctrine. But you do understand, though, that the Kingdom of Denmark actually controlled Greenland when the Monroe Doctrine was initially made. It's not like they did that recently. Greenland has been a holding of the Danish kingdom for about 700 years. The United States has only existed for 250. So by the time the Monroe Doctrine was declared by President Madison Monroe, the territory of Greenland had been under the Danish crown for about 500 years up until that point. So there's no way to say, oh, this is just, the Monroe Doctrine, because even back then everyone just went, whatever. And on top of that doesn't even make any sense, because when the Monroe Doctrine was declared, there were still large parts of South America, in the Americas, that were controlled either by Spain or by Portugal. So how in the world does that even apply? It doesn't. It doesn't at all apply. Like the whole Monroe Doctrine deal applies to countries trying to come into the Americas and then meddle in internal affairs. If they were already here, then they're already here. But there's no way to like skin that cat to make that sort of an argument work, because it just doesn't make any sense. Like literally everyone around the United States, when the Monroe Doctrine was declared, was a subject of some European power. Canada was not Canada. It was the Dominion of Canada, which was directly a subject of the United Kingdom and the British Empire. And while they had a parliament, they still had to take their orders directly from the British Parliament in the UK. Moving on down into Mexico, Mexico was still, I believe at that point, a part of New Spain and hadn't even conducted its revolution yet to see that Mexico would be turned into an independent state. The entirety of all the Central American states were still a part of New Spain as well, along with everything basically down in the Americas. Most of the Bolivar Revolution hadn't even been conducted yet. Brazil was also still a part of Portugal as well. So outside of America, literally everyone in the region, including some of the islands inside of the Caribbean, which were still owned and operated by the French, literally the entirety of the Americas was still generally operated as colonial holdings of European powers. So I don't really understand why people would say, oh, well, you know, the Greenland thing is an extension of the Monroe Doctrine, because it clearly isn't. And on top of that, we are already in Greenland. So why in the world do we need it if we're already there? That's the real point of the matter. It's not like it's giving us any advantage or any additional ability. We already have the abilities we would have if we physically took it. So what's the point? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But before we move on, folks, outside of this poll, we actually do have some more breaking news coming out this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So in the meantime, while we're seeing the Thai-Cambodia war break back out, we're also seeing the Venezuela situation happening tonight. We're also seeing that in the meantime, the U.S. is still sending what appears to be C-17 Globemasters down to the Middle East in preparation for what is believed to be renewed strikes on the Iranian regime. So we are seeing those on Flight Radar 24. In fact, there is a live flight, and also a huge shout out to Hone Music in the live chat for letting me know about this. There's currently a live Globemaster flight going through, let's see here, where is it going through? Appears to be about to go through Slovakia actually right now, and it's currently heading toward the Middle East, and this is just one of several flights that we've seen, Globemasters, heading down that way. So we're hearing Israel make a lot of wild statements as well, saying that some operation might be coming in the next 48 to 72 hours. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's what they're claiming. So we're seeing the flights which seem to be backing that up as well. So like Hookie Redneck just said, it looks like Iran might be next on the menu. It looks like they are once again the special of the night, potentially. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, they're on the menu, you say? Onga?
On the menu, I think the Ayatollah, I think they're serving up braised Ayatollah.
Man, I've heard that Khamenei Ali Amode is going to be on the menu here soon. But that's
I heard Khamenei on the commode when the strikes are happening.
Oh man, I heard that apparently one of the main sides that you get before the entree of the Khamenei Ali Amode is actually going to be mushroom clouds, which are generally a vaporized form of mushroom that is presented to you on a plate inside of a glass, which is an incredibly interesting form of an avant-garde dish. But I would have to say, very interesting nonetheless. It does appear that the Iranians are going to be on the menu here soon. But with that, I hope that addresses that news that's developing well. And getting back to another statement that someone said about Greenland, they said, we're taking it for the rare earths. No, we're not. The president openly stated we do not need any further rare earths, minerals, or ores, and we're not even doing anything with Greenland, for that matter, over rare earths. If you listened to the press conference that he had, you would have heard him say that verbatim, and you would be up to date with what the current prerogatives are and what the current positioning is. We're not even going up there for rare earths. And on top of that, the main important thing there is to even reach the rare earths in most parts of Greenland, you would have to go into the middle of the ice sheet that covers the entirety of the island, and then drill about a mile down through solid ice, which is basically rock at that density level that exists in Greenland, to even make it to the surface, the technical land surface of the island, to even start trying to get down to mining the rare earth ores that are inside of Greenland, which makes it economically unviable. And that's also why the president stated that we're not doing that for rare earths. So that's not even the point of why we would be taking Greenland, for people who are trying to argue that right now, because the president has already openly said in the press conference that he just recently had, where he threatened war with basically everyone in the Americas, that was not the reason we would be taking Greenland for at all. So, we have to work at stuff with face value. But we actually do have some more breaking news coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have some more breaking news about Venezuela. We have just gotten word that apparently a CIA report has been apparently prepared and also published, warning that Pedrino Lopez and Diosdado Cabello, who are both Venezuelan officials, who command the Venezuelan police and army, could derail any attempt at a transition, according to recent reporting. So I would say this one here is also kind of a little bit common sense, and not trying to diss on the report, but it is kind of common sense on this one. There's obviously a bunch of different people inside the Venezuelan government who are going to be vying for power, so that's not unexpected, but we are hearing it at least formalized here in a report. So once again, even if there is a negotiated settlement with the current leader, who is, what's her name? Delcy? I keep forgetting what her name is.
So,
the current. Yeah, I think her name's Delcy. It's the current lady who's the president of Venezuela, the acting president. Even if she agrees to something, it's likely that maybe one of these individuals right here might end up trying to overthrow or derail that transition with the United States. That's at least the report. That's the claim coming out of it. So that is expected. But Enforcer, what say you?
I wanted to say, the CIA report is quite obvious, I would have to admit. But it is kind of making it clear that taking Maduro out of the country really didn't achieve what we were looking for, and you're pretty much just going to have to wipe the whole government out and then build it up from the ground up. So basically, like the CIA report, folks, is kind of confirming what we already were saying right after Maduro was nabbed, and how in the world is nabbing Maduro really getting rid of the entire government of Venezuela, which it didn't, and now the CIA report is basically confirming that. So clearly, we're going to have to do a lot more than just nab Maduro. Cool operation, I will admit, and pretty cool that we got him. But at the same time, that's not achieving what we were looking for in Venezuela. So with that, I hope that does address that.
Also, by the way, the White House says they're monitoring the situation, which, based on the images we saw out of Mar-a-Lago the other night when they were monitoring the situation while the U.S. strikes were taking place, we can only assume that they're probably furiously typing the search word Venezuela on X probably every 5 minutes. So they are monitoring. Honestly, it's crazy to me that when the White House says they're monitoring a situation, at least according to what we saw in the images that came out from those strikes that we saw the other day, they were monitoring it via Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of crazy. They do the same monitoring that we're doing, that we report to you here live on the channel. That's crazy, but that's apparently what they're up to.
So yeah, we're getting presidential levels of intelligence briefings right now, folks. No joke, because they actually use Twitter as well for intelligence gathering and knowledge building on what's going on out there right now. So I hope that does address that well. And so with that in mind, it is time for us, folks, to move on out of that little bit of news. And I think, Matthew, at this point, we'll probably start getting some questions, and we'll start seeing how the night's progressing, and we'll work from there. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our super chat questions here. I was just making sure we didn't have any more breaking news, but I think for now we might be okay. But we'll keep an eye out, though, because it seems like we've had breaking news on plenty of other topics, not just Venezuela tonight. But jumping into our first one here, this one is going to go to none other than Pat Bomar. And thank you very much, Pat, for that $100 support, and we do appreciate that. Very generous. He said, "Thank you for all you do, and go LSA."
And thank you so much for enjoying all that we do. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die, because we thank y'all massively for enjoying this channel and massively supporting it, going out of y'all's way, as a matter of fact, to support Pat Bomar. You're an old guard and a channel legend, and we thank you so much for enjoying what we do and helping us to be able to be on air, even on a Monday night, which technically we're not even supposed to be on air right now, but we are, because huge news looked to be breaking out in Caracas, and it kind of did. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support, and of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, Hokey Redneck said, "Do you think the DIA or NSA's in here?" I mean, we've been surprised at some of the people that watched the show before. We've learned later on who's watching, and we're like, no way they're watching. But apparently they are, from the sounds of it. So at least some of them. Not everybody, though. I'm not trying to, I'm not crazy or something like that. I'm not like the aliens are watching or something like that. We're not deluded. But there's been a lot of people watching. I think the people that you'd least expect watching the show, but are probably likely watching it, are actually the Venezuelans. ones. I would not be shocked. I'm being dead serious about that. I would not be shocked if some officials in the Venezuelan government are watching live streams just like ours, considering that we're the top of the chart right now for this topic. There's barely anybody else streaming about it. I would not be shocked if they're watching this right now because they don't have good intel collecting capabilities. They also use Flight Radar 24 to monitor the air traffic, which indicates they have a very bad lack of actual on-the-ground capabilities to monitor their own territory. So they get their stuff mainly through open source intelligence, kind of like what we're repeating here on the air. So who knows? So you could have the main people, Delcy, but you could have all of them watching right now. I don't know. They could be watching right now feeling like they've been called out for all we know.
But you know what's funny, folks, is that we actually do know of at least a couple of different sorts of people who watch our show that would be affiliated with either U.S. government operations or foreign government operations. And again, I'm not going to get into the details of exactly who, except for one, because he cited us in a book. But we've had we've had former national security advisors watching the show. We have family members of the vice president's family who watch the show. We have foreign ministers who watch the show. We have actually people who work with mainstream media who are analysts for those larger companies. They also watch our show and they talk to us a good bit. And we also have had a former CIA director who watches the show quite commonly, who is David Petraeus, who was actually the CIA director for 2 years, I believe from about 2010 to 2012. And the reason why I'll say his name, we don't say the others because we keep generally who watches the show in a bit of confidentiality. But David Petraeus is one that we can publicly state because he is actually the guy who quoted us in his book Conflict as a historical source of news on the war in Ukraine. You can actually find this in the Ukraine war chapter about open source intelligence and also news coverage of that conflict, which he actually quoted us as being generally a revolutionary form of news coverage on the war in Ukraine. So we do have a decent amount of people who watch the show that are on up there from up top in a way, or at least we're up at the top at one point or another. We're always honored to hear the folks, no matter who it is, whether it's folks who work in the medical industry and whatnot, which there's also a lot of people, folks you wouldn't believe, that watch the show that don't have anything to do with the government, but they're people that some folks would generally know. Like, funnily enough, there's a huge YouTube channel that some people may or may not know. I know them myself because I've watched their videos and still watch them to this day. But Real Engineering, who is the channel with 5 million subscribers, who makes all of the incredibly cool videos that are very well made about the insane engineering of vehicles and structures and so on. He actually has publicly subscribed to our channel and watches it from time to time as well. So there's a whole bunch of people who watch the show. So whenever we say you never know who's watching, there's a pretty decent reason for us to say that. Because over the past few years, there's been people we would never believe that would have watched our show that commonly watch it. And then we're like, oh my God. And we're like, who else is watching us at this point? Like, we don't know.
And then we've also been hated on by the best of the best. We got blocked by the special envoy to the United States, Kirill Dmitriev, on Twitter. We've gotten some really interesting attention from some of the Russian officials that apparently maybe watch the show from time to time. So it's a lot of people. We get some very livid haters from time to time who are somewhat high profile, and also thankfully to our gratitude, I guess you could say, we also get some high profile individuals as well that watch that are friendly to our work here. So very cool all the way around. The blocking and also the gratitude as well.
Yeah, also another cool thing, I won't get into a lot of detail on this, but I personally actually know a lot of people myself who either were in the armed forces when I met them, or they got into the armed forces and I generally knew them most of my life. But during the 12-day war in between Iran and Israel, there actually was a decent amount of U.S. forces present over there, and after the fact, some of the people that I personally knew that couldn't really tell me a lot about what they were doing. They actually told me that our coverage was a great help during that time because some of those folks actually were getting missile alerts before their base's air raid sirens even sounded for incoming Iranian missiles, and they were getting to shelter just based off of what we were saying on air before the missile alerts even went off. So that was a really cool thing to hear as well, that our coverage is even faster than a base's air alert systems, telling people that there's incoming missiles, because generally from what I've heard from folks that were over there, we were usually about 10 minutes ahead of time before the missiles would make it over their air base or their facility that they were at in the Middle East during the 12-day war. So we were 10 minutes ahead of air raid sirens even.
Also, the most recent one that we got, and we were thankful for this one too, because we recently had shouted out a bunch of United 24's fundraisers. United 24 also gave a big shout out to the channel as well on their YouTube page as well. So we were grateful for that one as well. We appreciate all the gratitude, by the way. We sincerely appreciate it because, of course, it does provide some morale boosts from time to time, especially when we get so much hatred from those Ruskies. They don't like what we do. I don't know why the Ruskies hate our show so much, because everybody else seems to like it, but not the Ruskies.
Man, everyone else is having a fun time on the LSA boat, except the Russians. They're just kind of like thrashing in the water near to the boat, and they're quite angry. I mean, honestly though, the Russians hate the channel for a good reason, folks. We absolutely cannot stand enemies of the United States, no matter what they are. The Russians are an enemy of the United States, and we've made that openly clear over the years, which they don't really like when people actually speak truth about what kind of position they take on the U.S. and Americans in general. But anyways, with that, folks, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we're going to get back on into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
Honestly, I feel like we could work at Krispy Kreme the way we're doing all this glazing right now. Like, hopefully, it didn't come off. I saw one person say, "Man, this is a lot of glazing." That's not my intent behind saying that stuff, by the way. We make a point not to be braggadocious because that sounds really crass. So hopefully, it didn't come across like that. Hopefully, but
the reason why, folks, we were explaining that is because sometimes we sit there and say, you never know who's watching, and then usually a lot of people's knee-jerk reactions, please, no one's watching you, and then it's like, well, actually, like, the only reason we say that, we used to never say that back in the day. The only reason we say that now is because there's a whole bunch of people we would never believe would watch the show that are watching it that we know of. And then we're like, who else is watching it that is staying, hidden, and they don't really want us to know that they watch the show. So it's not really glazing. It's more so explaining that statement so that all of y'all can kind of get why we even would say something like that. It's not that we think so highly of ourselves that we're like, people are calling us up from all over going, sir, your coverage is so good. It's not that sort of a thing. It's that we never expected that, and that is the case. So then we're like, who else is watching? So we just kind of want you to know why we would even say that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next super chat here is going to go to none other than Brian Maddox. And thank you very much, Brian, for that very generous $100 support, and we appreciate that very, very much. And Brian said, what a Monday video, and you guys rock, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and thank you so much for the unbelievably massive support. And really, it is crazy, Brian Maddox. And also, by the way, legendary what you did last night with that $2.5 thousand donation. And I gotta say that it is really something else to be on air on a Monday. We generally never expect to be on air, and we didn't expect to be on air today. We were actually kind of a little late to the punch by about an hour because we were actually wandering around the city when that started to happen, and I had to then go get Matthew and myself back to our HQ so that way we could get this thing cracking. So crazy, luckily enough, we did go on air in time to cover the tail end of everything that was going on, and I got to thank you massively for your support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you once again, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die.
Indeed. I must say, also, by the way, it is wild how many people we've had watching tonight. We've already had 200,000 people on the stream already on a Monday night of all nights. We usually take this night off tonight, but when we were actually in the car coming back from an area around where we live, and we were like, hey, wait a minute, something's happening. So I was sitting over there. I was in the passenger seat. I was sitting over there looking and trying to get all my sources together for it. And I was like, I think something might be happening with a possible coup attempt or something like that. But later it turned out it was just the Venezuelans apparently having a bit of a frantic, manic episode and firing on each other. So a little bit weird with that. But we had to rush back home. And unfortunately, it was right at rush hour, too, so that wasn't any good. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to Hokey Redneck. And he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that support. We appreciate that. He said, thank you for working on your day off.
And thank you so much for enjoying us working on our day off, Hokey Redneck. We're always honored to know that a lot of people consider us to be a primary source of news, and that's why our off days are very flexible. Because Mondays, we're never supposed to run a show on, according to our official schedule. But if something big is happening, we know that a lot of y'all are considering us to be y'all's primary source of news, and a lot of people have been saying recently they don't believe anything unless if it comes through us. So whenever anything big happens, we are always honored to be on air, and I thank you massively for supporting this channel, so we have the ability to keep our lights on and pay our bills so that way we can dedicate our entire lives and devote ourselves completely to the coverage of the news. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Blind Man. And thank you very much, Blind Man, for that $50 support. And he said, hello, enforcers in LSA. And what's the situation in Rio de Janeiro and combat footage of police versus militia?
Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on the situation in Rio de Janeiro. That's the first I've heard of such a thing, and I would have to look into that a whole lot more to know what's really going on. Considering that Rio de Janeiro is a large city within Brazil, but it's not the capital of Brazil, I would probably consider that to be more so of a domestic political situation, so it probably wouldn't even hit our coverage anyways. But that is very interesting to hear about, and we will try and look into that a little bit more off air. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep it rolling. And also, Matthew, by the way, I do have to say that the Rio de Janeiro landing simulator on Microsoft Flight Simulator is pretty goated, honestly. I really like that one.
And it's the one where again? It's a Rio de Janeiro airport landing?
Yeah, remember it's the one where you're in the A320 and you have to land it in high winds over this little bay right here near Rio de Janeiro at this runway right here.
Yeah, I love those right there. Those high wind landings. Those are always great.
Oh yeah, you know the other cool one, folks. Speaking of Microsoft Flight Sim, not to get sidetracked here, the other cool one is Jackson Hole up here at in Wyoming. Where in the world is that airport? Right here. This one's super cool because you actually come in on an approach over Snake River, and you have to fly in. I think it's in. I don't even think that's in high winds. It's just with a private jet, which is really touchy on the controls. But you have to land it at the Jackson Hole Airport right here, which is also a really cool one to do. Really, really like that landing. That one's a fun one. That one's actually my favorite. It's the Rio de Janeiro one, the Gibraltar one, and the Jackson Hole Airport one. Those will be my three favorite on Microsoft Flight Sim and the landing sim. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And huge thanks to you once again for the support.
Indeed. And our next one goes to, once again, Hokey Redneck. He throws in another $50 support, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that support. Once again, the second support. He said, an actual question. Can you talk about the difference between small arms and cannons, artillery, mortars, and what caliber is the change over?
So that's actually a really interesting question. And generally, it kind of depends because all of these definitions kind of have a lot of wiggle room to them, as a matter of fact. So you can actually see that some things that would technically be, say, an autocannon are actually technically within the small arms categories, like an anti-tank rifle or something along those lines. Because what is crazy is that on a modern M3 Bradley, let me go pull up an M3 Bradley for all of y'all. The main gun on an M3 Bradley would be a 25mm Bushmaster autocannon. And those things are quite effective and fairly powerful, to be entirely honest. Not extremely powerful, but we have seen one of these mess up a T-90 on several occasions in Ukraine, and it does a pretty damn good job at it. But what's interesting, though, is let me go and get y'all this here really quickly, because this is technically an autocannon, so it's like a vehicular-based mounted weapon. But the Russians, or the Soviet Union actually, in the Second World War, had this thing, which is called the PTRD-41. Which is a pipe gun, basically, but it's an anti-tank pipe gun. This thing fired, if I'm not mistaken, let me see here, a 14.5mm round, which technically these days would be that of a very heavy machine gun, like a Dishka or an NSV. NSVs are very rarely used on a tripod. They're basically always tank mounted in Russia. But this thing used the same caliber, and crazily enough, it was a singular manned, a one-man anti-tank rifle that technically fell in the small arms category. And there are loads of other anti-tank guns that were way larger in caliber than this, like the Lottie anti-tank rifle, which I believe was a 20mm. And a 20mm would generally be considered in the modern day something along the lines of a vehicle-mounted autocannon, or a fixed-position autocannon. Back then, this was actually, once again, something along the lines of more so small arms than even a crew-served weapon, and was used by the Finns in an anti-tank role. Very interesting sort of stuff with how that works. And even in the modern day, the definitions are just very loosely based, but we can get some overarching ideas on what small arms are and other sorts of systems like that. And let me make sure to get your super chat so that way I can address each one of those categories the best I can with the kind of definition I could give right off the top of my head. Small arms generally are something that can be generally operated by a singular operator. So one infantryman can be given an SMG, he can be given a light machine gun or a carbine, an assault rifle, anything along those lines, and and he'll be able to operate that basically entirely on his own. Cannons generally are a crew-served weapon, and cannons particularly are kind of the same as artillery. Usually in the modern day, they take the form of a howitzer, which is something more akin to indirect fire. A cannon in the literal sense was actually a direct line of sight sort of a gun. So you would see, like, let me go pull up a Napoleon gun here. Let's see here, a Napoleon cannon, actually, that would be the right name for it. This is Napoleon cannon, which was probably one of the most common designs throughout the entirety of the Napoleonic era of warfare. And cannons like these, and even the ones into World War II, like the French 75mm, are direct line-of-sight guns, meaning that the operator of this artillery piece has to be able to look directly from the barrel at their target in the distance, adjusting for round drop over distance, and be able to fire directly at their target. In the modern day, an M777, which is generally the only howitzer that we use in the United States, is a howitzer and not technically a cannon. Howitzers actually fire in a more indirect arc. So these artillery operators, high chance, will never actually see their target physically in front of them and directly fire the cannon right at it. They will actually be firing this indirectly at a high angle of fire where it arcs generally onto its target, but it's a very shallow arc over a very long distance, say 15 miles or farther than that. Now, the difference between that and a mortar is that a mortar is a lot more short range, and we'll pull up the most ubiquitous one, which would be any 81mm mortar. 81mm mortars are basically the mainstay of every single army on the planet these days, something around that caliber, and mortars are a lot more short range. They're much more rapid fire, but generally smaller in caliber, and they lob their shot right onto the target. So when a mortar round comes down, unlike a cannon, which is basically firing straight at the target, or a howitzer, which is kind of conducting a shallow lob at its target, a mortar is basically flinging the round up in air and then coming right back down almost vertically on top of its target. These are wildly effective as infantry support weapons, and generally, I would say that, especially in modern warfare, up until the drone age, which drones have basically replaced the mortar for most intents and purposes, at least in Ukraine, but a infantry squad is basically unsupported if there is not a mortar team within an area. Mortar teams are very important for the suppression of enemy infantry units, and also are highly mobile and also fire rapidly, meaning that their suppression is incredibly effective, and they're able to fix an enemy position in place if they were attempting to conduct fire and maneuver drills or tactics, and then you can call in heavy artillery like an M777 once you've fixed them in place by overwhelming firepower through an infantry squad and a mortar team to then wipe out that infantry squad that you're up against at the moment. And then the last thing, let's see, that you brought up, Hokey Redneck, which was a really interesting one, would be, let's see, actually that was the last one, was a mortar. But calibers generally can be anything. Like, for example, the Russians actually have a mortar that is a 240mm Tulpan, and let me go pull that one up really quickly, because it is so large, they actually have to mount it on the back of a vehicle and deploy it in place, and then lower the round into the mortar tube, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with some form of a crane that's mounted on the vehicle. So you can actually have mortars that have a significant overlap with, say, the caliber of an artillery piece, or a cannon or a howitzer, and then some small arms can even get so large in caliber that they're starting to enter the realm of, say, an autocannon, or something along those lines. So there isn't really a whole bunch of, like, distinction in caliber. The caliber can basically be whatever you want, and some mortars even got as small as 40mm knee mortars, that were incredibly small, usually used quite commonly by the Japanese in the Second World War. So there isn't really, like, significant distinctions between calibers, but generally it's the way that the round is fired at the enemy that makes the biggest difference between a cannon, and a howitzer, and a mortar. And then as far as small arms go, they can basically be any caliber, usually in between, say, 30mm, which is about the biggest I've ever seen. Even 40mm is really the biggest I've ever seen. It can be basically anywhere in between 40mm all the way down to something that would be about the size of a 22, which is basically what the U.S. Army uses in its 5.56 by 45mm rounds, which are the NATO standard, which in caliber size is basically a 22. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a humongous thanks to Hokey Redneck for the support, and I hope that answer was generally what you were looking for. And before we move on to the next one, we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So getting back real quick to the opposition leader of Venezuela, apparently she's done a interview on Fox News with, it appears to be Sean Hannity, it looks like. I tried to briefly listen to the clip, but I'm just going to have to go off what the transcript is that AZ Intel posted on Twitter. Apparently, she is saying that she is planning to go back to Venezuela as soon as possible. And she says that she's more useful to the cause there, apparently. And she's saying that apparently she believes that she can speak out from where she is now, but she feels like she needs to go back to Venezuela. So that's honestly a little bit of stupidity with that right there. She seems to be very desperate to get back in the running. I understand she's probably a little bit frustrated and irritated by being sidelined by the United States, but it's certainly not time to start doing, stupid things like putting yourself in danger and going back to a country where they would probably try to get her, probably. So I'm not sure really what she's doing with that, but seems a little bit desperate. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's incredibly interesting to hear, and I would say that she probably needs to stay in Norway, because returning back to Venezuela will pretty much guarantee, in my opinion, imprisonment at this point, seeing that she clearly had heavy U.S. involvement up until this point. They will probably arrest her once she tries to arrive back in Venezuela, so not really the greatest move. But with that, I hope we addressed that well, and moving on from that, we are getting on into the next question.
All right. And moving on to our next one here. Also, by the way, I have to make this comment because I was thinking this myself. It's kind of interesting to me. I'm not bashing these people individually, but it's interesting that Maria, she is very desperate to go back to Venezuela and take power. Like, she is really desperate for that. And also with Iran, you have Reza Pahlavi. He's also very desperate to do that. So they are raring to go to get to these respective countries to basically what they believe to take power. Because they think that apparently they'd be the best suited for the job. So I'm just not totally sure. I mean, we have to have elections, I would assume. That's probably the best case scenario. An election in Venezuela and an election in Iran, if the government's overthrown there, to see exactly who they really want. These people seem to think that they're already pre-chosen, which is a little bit interesting. So I guess we'll find out later on down the road.
I would have to definitely agree with that. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, loves waffles.
Hey!
Who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. They said Marmot Mondays.
And thank you so much for the support, Jenna, last name Tolls. And we are absolutely going to dub this Marmot Mondays whenever we have a breaking news show like this, because, it basically is incredibly unprecedented for us to ever have a Monday show. But we are always honored and greatly appreciative to be on every single Monday, whenever the news is large enough to be able to cover it with you all. Just want to let you all know, though, if you're new to the channel, this is incredibly rare. We run streams every day of the week but today. So if you are going to be sticking around for a while, the next Monday, chances are pretty decent we're not going to be on air, because that's usually the day that we take off to be able to recharge and also do a whole bunch of errands in the background to get ready for the next week, so that way we can get trucking on with the next week of news with everything else included there. So I hope that does address that incredibly well. But a humongous thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to have a Marmot Monday. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from Monty T86. And thank you very much, Monty, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate it. And Monty said, I've been following since the beginning and first-time contributor. And what is Europe's response really able to affect American actions?
And thank you so much for the support, Monty86. And I gotta say, thank you so much for supporting the channel for the first time ever, and thank you for following since the beginning. Now, to answer your question, Europe actually has a great deal of responses that they can make to the United States that can affect our actions in reality. A lot of people have this mindset in America, which I have to say, usually with most other countries, especially our enemies, it's generally a well-placed sort of a mindset, but using that mindset against our allies is very pointless, really, and also it doesn't really make any sense. It's generally nonsensical, if I was to be completely frank about it. But a lot of Americans have this idea that the Europeans are a bunch of weak wusses and that they have nothing in terms of anything to give to the United States, either monetarily or militarily or strategically, which I would be entirely honest, anyone who takes that position is woefully ignorant. Europe is incredibly important to the United States. As a matter of fact, the European Union, not speaking about the UK, which basically is still thrown in the clump with the rest of the EU, they are our largest trading partner on the planet as a trading bloc. And considering that no individual European nation generally trades with the U.S. outside of the EU's framework, we basically look at it as one large contiguous block of a trading market. And that means that the European Union is our largest trading partner because they make up $1 trillion a year in trade with the United States. That's collective trade in terms of imports and exports. A lot of people get caught up with the idea that the U.S. is at a disadvantage and we're losing money if we have a trade deficit with someone, which is not at all the case. Really, you're just looking for trade volume. Whatever we're importing and whatever we're exporting combined is generally the kind of money that we're making off of that trade exchange, or we're making even more than that. So going off of that, Europe is our largest trading partner. So anything that we do that pisses them off to where they've just had enough, they can start to cause significant damage within the United States by implementing sanctions. Sanctions and tariffs are not at all beneficial to either party, but if a country does get pissed off and angry enough, they can do it, pretty much, cutting their nose to spite their face, but they'll also cause a significant amount of damage in the U.S. Not only that, the European Union, in terms of manpower, if we combine all of the EU's forces and the UK's, and we put them all under one banner, which wouldn't really happen in real life, but let's say that will, they actually are the largest military in the world by personnel numbers alone. In terms of aircraft, they get very close to being the size of the combined air forces of the United States, including the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy. But the Army only does rotary aviation for the large part. And in terms of helicopters, they do fall a little bit short, but in terms of armor, they also have a fairly comparable number. So basically, if you look at the EU as a large bloc, they basically are the United States as a reflection of ourselves, only a couple of $1 trillion short economically. And when I say a couple of trillion, I mean it's not even that much. The US has a GDP right now of about 27 trillion. The EU has a combined GDP of around 23 trillion. If you throw the UK into that, which basically they still are, they actually have an economy that's only about a $1.5 billion short of us. So in every way, they're basically a direct reflection of the United States in military ability, in monetary ability, and in strategic ability. So generally, they could do a decent bit against us, not speaking about direct war, but in diplomatic actions to cause us damage, because it's basically looking at the U.S. in a mirror, which I find very funny that a lot of people don't look at it that way, because they are largely, in a sense, just the U.S., but culturally different, but in every other way almost identical. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Solid Stellar, who puts in a $40 support. And thank you very much, Solid Stellar, for that support. We appreciate that. They said, do they have some kind of democracy dictatorship? And what do y'all think? I don't think so. As a form of governance, I'm not sure if democracy dictatorship would ever work, because democracy is ruled by the people. Dictatorship is ruled by one. So they kind of run contrary to each other. But Enforcer, how do you interpret it?
Democracy is of the people, by the people, for the people. But the people are slow.
But the people are scholars.
Man, I would say democracy and dictatorship just doesn't mix. It's like oil and water, basically. You can't really have this a democracy and a dictatorship at the same time. Unless if it's an emergency. Rome technically did have a dictatorship while having democracy through several rare instances in the history of the Roman Republic, but those were in instances of dire national emergency to where a singular dictator was needed to be able to command the country and make sure that there was a unified command and control apparatus. Outside of that, it was a democracy up until it fell and, well, kind of fell, and then it became the Roman Empire. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wabba, and Wabba puts in a $20 support, and thank you very much, Wabba, for that support. He said, you guys are wrecking my guitar practice again.
I'm terribly sorry about that. I'm sorry. We wanted to make sure to get to the big news that was happening tonight, and I'm glad that we were able to, but I'm sorry that we interrupted your guitar practice. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Leesburg Paranormal, who puts in a 20. And he said, what are the charges, sir? Buying a succulent Chinese dog shit radar system? An Air Force KC-135 tanker crew chief vet here?
What are the charges? Buying a radar? A succulent Chinese radar? How dare you, sir? Get your hands off my cross-section! Oh, this is the bloke who has me on the cross-section, people. Oh, and you, sir, are you ready to receive my limp semiconductors? How? But beyond that, I gotta say, really cool to hear that you're actually a former chief for KC-130J, if I'm not mistaken, Matthew, if I'm getting that correct right there.
Yes, he was a tanker crew chief veteran, and well, now he's a veteran, but he was on a KC-135.
Oh, a KC-135. I just said a KC-130J. That was the wrong one. But still, that is really cool to hear. And I gotta say, the tanker forces of the U.S. Air Force are very underrated. They make everything that we do possible. If it wasn't for air tankers and the KC-135s and the KC-46s, and even the C-130 aerial tankers, which are very rarely used, at least from what I know and what we've seen operationally over the past few years, the entire operations of the Air Force, the Navy, and many others would generally grind to a halt. So a humongous thanks to you for the support and also your service in an incredibly important part of the logistical functions of our air forces. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Timothy Bunnell, and he put in a 20 and said, I think it was probably the Venezuelans making Hot Shots Part 3.
Maybe. I mean, that's possible. It's not out of the question. You know, maybe they got their priorities in line. They're getting Hot Shots 3 put out. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and help with this channel. Wait a minute. I know what it is, Matthew. I know what it is. Steven Seagal went down there and was shooting a movie. That's what it was.
Man, I guess possibly so. I'm not sure if he's shooting movies anymore, though. I think he might be washed up.
Man, you know, actually, Matthew, the last time I heard about a Russian oil loading facility at the port of Taman getting hit, they were talking about all of the oil washing up on the shore, and then in the middle of it all was Steven Seagal. I was like, wow, the irony of that. But anyway, it's
Yeah, Steven Seagal's so washed up, not even the Russian government gives him attention anymore. They sent him out there for some, I think they were trying to film a video or something, and they didn't even bother to really do too much work to get the guy ready for the video. They just filmed it, and he looked not too great on the video. So, I mean, and not even the Russians bother with him anymore. He's just like a joke.
Man, he really is, man. It's so sad because I remember when they used to treat him seriously, and people used to be like, "Look, we have Steven Seagal." It's like, yeah, it's like you got the bottom of the barrel of U.S. actors. It's like, so what? It's like, you know, a lot of them are wonky like that. It's like, so what are we? What are we supposed to get out of that? But anyways,
honestly, they can keep him.
I mean, and they did, like, much to America's benefit. Man, meanwhile, Steven Seagal has been in Russia, folks, really bringing down the movie industry. Because if y'all seen any of the movies that they put out with Steven Seagal in it in China or Russia, he basically, like, walks in a room, and everyone else is, like, speaking Mandarin or Russian. So they'll be like, the Krasnik. And then he'll be like, hey, listen, for some reason we can understand each other, although I'm talking English and you're speaking in Russian. But for some reason I can understand you and you can understand me. And then it's the same thing in Mandarin for the Chinese movies. And he literally does, like, no acting at all. He just walks in a room, reads off the lines like he's out of breath, and then he might lift a gun every once in a while. But he doesn't even do any martial arts stuff. He just, like, blasts people without even moving, and he doesn't ever even take a hit. It's like, these are the worst movies I've ever seen. And I've only seen snippets of them on YouTube, but I have to agree with the critics. Those are horrendous. Like, the worst movies made. So, Russia taking Seagal, Matthew, I think that it really did America a humongous service, because we don't have to have trash like that being put out in the entertainment industry any longer.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a reason he left in the first place, and that probably has something to do with it.
I think so. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Alfred's mom, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Alfred, Alfred's mom, that is, for that support. They said, thanks for the reporting.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our reporting. We, of course, put a lot of pride into it, and we thank you so much for helping us to keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Garrett Frost, and thank you very much, Garrett. He said, it's crazy to think the same team... Excuse me, it's like sandpaper. But Garrett said, crazy to think that the same team is going to take the Bella 1 on the other side of the pond.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, you know, like the Bella 1 has broken out all the way across the Atlantic, and now it's finally maybe going to get boarded, although we still are not really sure on that. But still, a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, thankfully for me, I have some trending agua right here in my water bottle. So it turns out that I'm saved by the bell. But the next one here goes to Flying Snake, who puts in a 20. And they said, what do you think of Maduro's lawyer, who also defended Julian Assange?
Wow.
How much does he charge, I wonder? And also, is it confirmed that that will be Maduro's lawyer, by the way?
I think it has been confirmed, actually. I would have to say, everyone in the United States and the U.S. justice system is always entitled to representation, and I guess Maduro's decided that he's probably going to try and go for the best that he can afford. I mean, that's really all I can say about it is that, in America, you do have a right to an attorney. I got to be entirely honest, though. I'm kind of shocked that that guy would even take the case because I feel like a lot of people in America would be kind of scared of maybe the ire that's. I'll be entirely honest with you all. The people who want Maduro out, it's at least some of them because they kind of just follow the president. They're gonna basically what I'm trying to say is extreme political people on the left or right are usually incredibly violent. So this guy's gonna get death threats from half of the extremely political part of the country. I'm honestly surprised he would even want to take that on, probably knowing that that's what's going to be coming around the corner. Because I'm sure he went through this with the whole Julian Assange thing as well. But apparently he is going to be getting the best representation that he can afford, which is how it goes in America. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I hope that people also understand that Maduro's got to have an attorney. So I would hope that people aren't going to be sending this guy death threats and stuff over that because it's someone's got to represent him. If he's willing to pay, an attorney has to take his case. Someone does, or he's going to be given a public defender. Hopefully people aren't going to go nuts and act like an idiot over this guy taking this case.
They won't. That doesn't happen. Everybody understands an attorney's an attorney. They're counsel for hire, so that's their job. So I mean, unless somebody's a nutcase or something, they'll understand he's just the attorney. So I doubt that's going to happen. But I think Assange got a plea deal. I think or something like that. I think Assange got off pretty light for what they were alleging he did. So I think he might stand a good chance, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, I would have to say, someone also said Maduro is guilty of all charges. Well, that's for the jury to decide. I don't mean to say that, revoking your ability to say that, but at the same time, just trying to act like we can waive someone's rights to a trial in the American system, even if they clearly appear to be guilty. They still have to go to trial. They have to have a trial. That's the American way. Revoking due process for folks is not something I'll ever stand behind because that's basically violating the principles that make Americans American. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Pericatorius, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Pericatorius. They said, I work for Special Olympics and help get their resources for raising funds and community events. And I'm good friends with the Shriver and Kennedy family, and they both watch you.
Oh, really? Well, that's nice to hear, and thank you so much for supporting and sharing that with us. That's really cool to know. The Kennedys, you're talking about the Kennedys, the Kennedy family of political fame?
I don't know. I mean, I would imagine they might have mixed feelings about us if they're watching.
Yeah, I don't know. But still,
They say that they might be watching.
They might be watching it. If they like it, let us know. But beyond that, a huge thanks to you for the support. And really cool to hear that, actually. We thank you so much for sharing that. That's really neat to hear. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat here is going to go to none other than Quattro. And thank you very much, Quattro, for that support. They said, what do Russia and China do between the Iranian currency collapse and the Venezuelan regime change?
Can you reread that one again?
They said, what do Russia and China do between the Iranian currency collapse and the Venezuelan regime change?
Really nothing, honestly. There's really not a lot that they can do, even in the Middle East, for that matter, to help out the Iranians without the situation backfiring on them even worse. So basically, they're kind of powerless at this point to stop what's going on in Venezuela and Iran. I gotta be honest with y'all, the Axis powers have been losing a lot of the battles that have been seen over the past few years. In Russia's attempt to stop further countries from joining NATO, they actually got Sweden and Finland to join NATO in the process, which was completely backfiring on them, and they're also still losing the war in Ukraine. Down in Syria, they lost the Assad regime, so Syria is not even anywhere close to being a part of the Axis powers. They're about to lose Iran as well, and with that, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, as well as al-Nusra and all the others inside of the region that are supported by the Iranians. China has also seen that U.S. support, well, generally global support is growing towards Chinese resistance, which isn't really going to be boding them all too well in the future. And then on top of that, they're now going to be losing Venezuela, which was their only hope at building a sphere of influence directly under the United States in the Americas. So honestly, they've been losing on most every front strategically, at least recently. So except for India. India is probably the only victory that I could say they have, because India turned tail from being middle of the fence nation and is now entirely in the Axis at this point. So that's one way that they've gotten at least one victory. But in most every other way, they've been losing significantly. So there's basically nothing they can do in either of these instances as well. But a huge thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, we do have a little video here that just came out. Apparently, it's a video of Khamenei. Khamenei appears to be worried on our Twitter page. And of course, you might want to show the people this. It looks like I'm not sure about Khamenei.
Let's see here. Oh, it's this clip. Oh man!
Don't play the audio, but I mean, you can show the video. I mean, Khamenei's not looking so good.
Oh
my
it's
God!
AI made? Oh my God!
Yes, it's AI, man. Of course, it's AI.
But dude, remember that one clip though where they were doing that whole thing in Tehran, and then the jet flew over, and he actually did look up? I thought it was that clip again.
I think that was the template for the video. They took that one and gave that as inspiration. Then they apparently added the bear coming in there.
Oh.
But it ought to not be a bear. It ought to be an eagle attacking, because it's not going to be Russia attacking Khamenei. It's going to be the U.S.
Bruh, why in the world is it that whenever AI has to get involved in action, they always make the people look so goofy? Like, they don't even look realistic. Like, at this point, man, like, literally, man, it's like they took the clothing inspiration at this part of the video, like the AI did, as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, Blood looks like he's about to get in a fight with Darth Vader here.
Honestly, like, that look on his face is wrong, too.
Man, really? Man, but anyways.
What's the bear about to do to him? I mean, that look on his face is like pure horror.
Man, he's looking into the mouth of the bear, and it's actually a bear suit, and it's none other than Diddy. Like, and Diddy's going, ain't nothing like a Diddy party. He's like, oh, God, no, I'm going to be with Maduro soon. Oh, man, at Fort Dix, of all places. That's where they put Diddy. They put him in Fort Dix in New Jersey. I'm not even kidding. It's spelled D-I-X, but it's pronounced the same. So, what kind of irony there, folks. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to, also, by the way, real quick, I do want to make an announcement. Several people have asked tonight, well, where's the Iran news and where's the Russia-Ukraine news? We're covering all of that tomorrow, by the way. Tonight was solely dedicated to the breaking news about Venezuela, because it was an ongoing breaking out situation. So all the news that has happened throughout today that's from all the other regions, we will cover that all tomorrow like usual for the last 48 hours on tomorrow's live stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, just to let everybody know.
And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Live Animal, who said the capture of Maduro is when the foreign and domestic politics will collide, and Maduro's trial events will be an event for conflict on the domestic level.
And I would have to say, let's see, it's not really like domestic and foreign, I'd say. It's kind of like more so still a foreign policy deal, even if he is involved in a trial in the United States. It doesn't really make it domestic, because the law is the law. Generally, it's not like someone can go, crack should be legal. It's like, well, someone can maybe make that argument, but he's on trial with that being codified as against the law. So, I don't really think it's going to be intersecting all too much. Some people make it out to be that way, but a lot of people make out a whole bunch of things to be domestically political, basically making foreign policy that, and that's not the case. And those people generally don't really, like, I don't mean to say it like that, but they don't really know what they're talking about, and they want to think and act like they do, but they don't. And then they make it sound like that, and that's not at all the case. But anyways, with that, I hope that is addressed the best I can, at least in my opinion. And big thanks to you once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $15 support from Dan Brooks. He said, overtime Monday pay.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a $12 super chat from The Secret Vault, who said LSA and The Secret Vault on YouTube supports LSA and the Enforcers.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting the kind voids. It's folks like you who help to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And I gotta thank you greatly for enjoying this channel and supporting us, so that way we can keep this thing rolling each and every single day. So humongous thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, Someone, Matthew, I just saw Hoagie Rennick earlier in the chat. I was wanting to address this because I found this to be really funny. Hoagie Rennick said, "Have the Mormons come around yet?" And tried to talk to you. You wouldn't believe it, but when we were trying to get ready for this, I don't know what they call them, like the missionaries or something. They like knocked on the door, and I was like, "What the hell?" Because I was in my office there, boom, boom, boom. I was like, "Who in the world?" So I went to the people, and I was like, "What?" So I opened up the door, and they're like, "Hi, I'm with the Church of Latter-day Saints." I was like, y'all aren't going to believe this, because I was like, I bet a lot of people would kind of just like send them on their way. I was like, y'all aren't going to believe this, but I'm actually trying to get ready for work right now, so I'm going to have to like do this some other time. Thanks though. And I just had like close that door in their face and get back to work. I was like, I feel bad being rude to folks no matter what, but at the same time, I was like, that is literally the worst time that they could have shown up, because I couldn't even politely like say, I'm good. Like, I was literally like, I'm
Well,
in
what
the
were they
middle.
wanting?
Like they were just wanting to talk about, their like Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that whole deal.
Like they were wanting in?
Like, yeah, they were actually like, could we come in and talk to you? And I was like, nah, I'm good. I was
Man,
like,
that's kind of wild.
apparently that's what they do normally. Like I've seen that around. Like they ask to come inside, and and then they like sit there at the door and like are like,
What if you were crazy or something? It's like, I mean, that's kind of a little risky, isn't it? I mean, you could be crazy.
I mean, apparently they just take the risk, I assume. Like
Huh.
it's interesting to me. I was like, huh, that's interesting. And also, like, oh man, it's a whole bunch of people like, you should have said this, you should have said that. Honestly, folks, my number one priority was I cannot spend any longer than a couple of seconds on this. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was like, I don't know, maybe something happened down the street. Maybe there's a gas leak and it's the police telling me I need to leave. But I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get to work. So I was like, I'm sorry, y'all. Like, I'm actually working right now. And then they were like, oh, what do you do for work? I was like, I'm a YouTuber. They were like,
Oh,
really?
damn.
I
We
was
got
like,
spies
yeah.
at the door. That's, I
Like,
tell you, they're doing some info gathering there. That's crazy.
yeah,
Some
like,
intel work at the door.
man, they're gonna put that down in the vault record up there in the mountain. I'm like, probably, but I was
Are you
like,
sure
yeah.
they were LDS?
Like they were, man. They had like the whole deal going on. They had like they had like the little tags and everything. I was like, oh, all right. I was like,
Oh.
but I didn't tell them the channel, folks. I was like, I'm a YouTuber. They're like, really? I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna have to see y'all around. Have a great day. And then I just closed the door and then ran right back upstairs. I was like, I gotta get back to work. I was like, I cannot spend any time on this. But also, what?
Oh man! Also, Tom Exman said, "Gee, Andrew, be careful. It could be the FSB." Honestly, I'm like, that's I don't know. Like, they were probably legit, by the way, because that is something the LDS does like, quite a bit. They even did that back in Alabama, where we lived there too. We left as they were showing up in the neighborhood. Like, we were driving out with the moving truck as they showed up, and I was like, "Hey, look, there's the Mormons over there." And we were like already like literally leaving the state at that point. So they didn't get us in Alabama, but apparently they're going to get us in Utah, because we're obviously like right in the middle of the layer of the Mormon Church here in Salt Lake City. So me personally, I'm not a Mormon. I'm a Christian, so I'm not really looking to convert or anything like that. But I'm not going to be rude either, like if that's the case. But also at the same time, though, I'm like, I don't care who it is at the door. I'm like, I'm not letting in strangers that I don't know into the house. I'm like, that's something that I'm going to have to pass on, whoever they are.
Also, the Sunken Grave said young men with elder tags. Now, you know what's weird? Like, I was telling Matthew about this. I was like, this is the weirdest thing. They were young ladies with the like elder tags and stuff. And I'll be honest with y'all, I didn't think that they got the young ladies involved in like the whole missionary work side of things.
Like college?
Yeah, like like college age, like young ladies, like those were the ones who were doing it. I was like, when I opened up the door, I was like, what? I was like, and they were like, hi, I'm elder sister. I was like, what? I was like, wait a minute, they have the young ladies doing this as well, including the young men. I was like, I thought it was just a young dude thing, like like when you graduate high school, or like when you're in high school, you wander around doing that, and in college. But apparently, the girls and the ladies, they do that too. I was like, I did not know that. Like, that was a shock to me. Like, I was like, huh? I was like, okay. I was like, apparently we're learning something new here.
Yeah, that's a big no for coming inside. That's a big no.
Yeah. I was like, nah, I'm good, thanks. I was like, I'm all right. Yeah, I'll see y'all around. I gotta get to work. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one here goes to Truck and Chef, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for that support. They said, do you think it might be the cartel trying to take over the city in Venezuela?
No. I did like the cartels are criminal syndicates. They have to be low key. Criminal syndicates becoming overt or very open about themselves to a significant degree, like saying taking government positions and getting involved in civil administration, that is always disastrous for criminal syndicates. So they're always going to remain incredibly low key. So they would wouldn't be conducting any sort of active firefights or rebellions to take control in Caracas, because that would very much put them in the limelight, and it would be very easy for intelligence agencies to track them down a lot easier than they already do. So with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see people mentioning the whole thing, like them sending out like a women to do the recruiting. That's something there that is fascinating to me a little bit, because I won't name the other group out there. And also, I'm not trying to insult the Mormons, by the way, so don't take it like this if you are a Mormon. But there's another group out there that does the exact same thing with the women for recruiters, and there happen to be a cult. It's a different group. I won't name them by name, but they're also notorious for doing that as well. They'll use women who are very, let's say, highly interested in whatever male they're talking to, and their whole objective is to talk them into joining the organization. That's the whole objective. So that's kind of interesting. Is there are male like LDS recruiters, right? Like there are.
Yeah, there's male, like it's actually, funnily enough, for the LDS, it's predominantly male, and from what I understood, the entire time that I was growing up, it was almost always male. I never saw any female groups ever represented in media or in real life or anything. So coming out here and seeing females doing that, or women basically, I was like, what? I was like, I didn't think that that was allowed. I thought they had like something against that, but apparently they don't. So I was like, I was like, that's interesting.
It's interesting for sure, like with that whole thing right there. It's kind of a little bit of a interesting deal.
I would say so. And also, folks, it's interesting because they had like a uniform going on too. Like the dudes have the uniform, but I was like the whole deal of it being women that were doing it was the thing that was shocking to me, because I've never heard of that before. And they were like wearing like those like kind of like black bubble jackets, man. You know what I'm talking about, where they have like the striated layers to it. Deal.
Yeah.
They were both wearing that. They had on like khaki pants. And like black dress shoes, and that's how they were both dressed. I was like, okay, so they have a uniform as well. I was like, this is just bizarre. Like I came upstairs and I got on a call with Matthew, and I was like, you wouldn't believe it, man. Like the Mormons just literally showed up while I'm trying to get everything ready on my end for the show. I was like, what interesting stuff like going on with that. I was like that was like a whole new phenomenon to me. Like I opened up the door and I was like, wait a minute, they're not dudes? I was like, I thought only the dudes did the mission work stuff. I was like, this is bizarre. Like, now I'm going to have to, like, research that and learn more about that, because we are...
Also, by the way, apparently they don't visit houses. So I'm not sure who you got at your door.
Well, wait, the who? Like, what do you mean?
I'm being told that apparently they do not visit houses quite like that, apparently.
What, the
someone
alias?
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, apparently not the houses. I was thinking that was a little bit strange. I'm like, they're sending two college-age females to a guy's door to recruit them, and then asking him to come inside the house. I'm like, that seems a little bit wild.
Let's see.
Someone said they do visit houses.
Yeah,
there's some people saying they don't, and some people saying they do.
Actually, as a matter of fact, I just pulled it up, and that is like codified doctrine. Like they go door to door. Because also you were just mentioning that they showed up in our neighborhood when we were leaving Birmingham, so that confirms they're going door to door as well. Because I mean, they're not just walking down the street, I mean, hell, we knew
those were guys though. Those were guys that was going around in where we were.
Let's see, do Mormon ladies? Let's pull that up. Oh, so they do as well. Like that, that's I just pulled that up as well. They do. Apparently that's common. I just never have heard of that though. Like that's news to me.
Brave souls, honestly.
Yeah, I would be honest with y'all. Yeah, I mean, like, what if they knock on some door and it's an absolute whack job? It's like that just seems like a terrible idea. Like that just.
I'm not gonna lie though. I will say this: the Mormons are kind of gangster a little bit. Like they go to these places that are really sketchy, like on these missions. Like I've seen them go to like. I can't remember exactly where it was. I don't know if it was Guyana or where it was, but it was like some really sketchy looking place. And they were just wandering around their little uniforms and stuff. Like they weren't fazed by it. Like they're in a place where most people would be scared to even walk to, because it's like criminal, like stuff going on. There's all kinds of crimes being committed and also violence. And they're just walking around like there's no worry in the world and pretty much getting respect. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of gangster, actually.
I mean, dude, they will go anywhere. I mean, it's really actually like, I gotta admit, folks, like, like we're not Mormons, by the way, just to make that clear, but they are very interesting because one, they're usually incredibly nice. Like we grew up around Mormons in our school in Alabama. There wasn't a lot of them, but they were always nice, and they generally were like the more upstanding students, which I generally respect a great deal. They also, whenever I've run into them in public, they're generally very nice. They're not always out to convert you, by the way. They're just nice to be nice, and generally they are quite well mannered and generally pleasant to be around. So I don't really have a I'm not a Mormon. I will probably never become one. I can tell you I'm not going to become one, but they are quite nice people. So I generally respect them because they are very nice people, and I think that's why they have respect put on their name even in places like Guyana or elsewhere, because it's just like they're fairly nice people who can have an issue with them. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the Wolfman, who puts in a 10. And the Wolfman said, has the Colombian president ever heard the phrase, if you talk that crap, the stuff happens?
FAFO. Oh god, I'm so tired of the FAFO thing, folks. I wish that would die off and we'd find a new phrase for that. But beyond that, I don't think he has, because he's really running his mouth like he doesn't know about that. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Invictus, who said, any law is only as strong as its enforcement, and if no enforcement mechanism exists, then neither does the law.
And I would generally agree with that. That's definitely true, especially for international laws. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And also, I saw someone say, I'm fine with the LDS. I'll be honest with you, I'm really fine with any religion, because it doesn't, like, as far as like day-to-day interactions, I'm not living with these people, and it's a free country. They can do what they want. The only thing I don't like, though, is when people take religion, which this is a standard in all groups, when people take religion and they use that to act superior to everyone else or put everyone else down, even if they're in the same religion that those people are in. Those are the people I don't like, because they're basically using it to further their arrogance and their narcissism. And they're just using that as a disguise for it. That's what I don't like, and that's just across any religion. And generally, one thing that I will say, huge credit to like the Mormon folks, they don't ever really do that. I haven't seen that yet. Might run into it one day, but I haven't seen it yet. But I've generally seen that in basically any other religious group, whether it's Christians, Islam, Judaism, or whatnot. There are people in those religious groups that will use their religion to act like they're greater than thou, but haven't seen that in the Mormons yet. So that's something to say. That's a good attribute of theirs. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Live Animal, who puts in a 10. And they said, United States of Atlantic.
Oh, I think the United States of America is just fine. I think it is. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to John Bernard, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, John, for the support. He said, no shout out needed, no question, just appreciation.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we always shout out and thank folks for their support, even if they don't want us to, because it's a rule on this channel.
What the hell?
Huh?
What was that? Did you hear that squeak? It was like some squeak that came across the mic. It was loud.
No, let me hold up. Let me see.
Bernard, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, John, for the support. He
said,
no shout out needed, no question, just appreciation.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we always shout out and thank folks for their support, even if they don't want us to, because it's a rule on this channel.
What the hell?
That didn't happen on the live replay.
That's wild. It was like some loud shriek that came through my headphones. It was like a high-pitched, like, screech that came through.
It's going to be okay, Matthew. It's going to be okay.
I don't think it's going to be okay. I think I'm getting hit with that Havana little trick.
Everyone get the straight jacket in the paddy wagon. He's losing it. I'm just
See, that's why you don't send people to random people's houses. They could be crazy as hell.
Did you hear that? It's like nothing happening. You're like, oh, did you hear that?
That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do if they show up at my door. I'm going to be like, when they say, hey, can we talk to you for a minute? I'm going to be like, do you not hear that? Listen, do you not hear it? I hear it right now. Man, I'm gonna be trolling. I'm not gonna do that, by the way. Like, I'm not mean like that. I'm not cruel. I'll just be polite. And I'm not gonna do that.
It's probably some artifact on your end, like an audio artifact that popped through for some reason on Discord. That's what I would assume, because it didn't come through on the live replay at all. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Scottish Border Force, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Scottish Border Force, for that support. He said, would you ever progress the channel to a proper news channel with a live video of you guys in the studio?
Oh, we're not proper now. I'm just playing with you. I know what you mean. You're wanting to see if we'll ever do like a studio based thing. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just not really a big fan of doing the whole thing of being in front of a camera. It's a whole lot of extra work, and I feel like as far as like dedicating a lot of our time and attention, instead of distracting it by, making sure that we're looking prim and proper for a camera and having to do all the camera work and think about what we're looking like in a camera and how we're reacting to that camera so the audience can see it. I think it's a lot better, in my opinion, to put work and effort into our coverage of the news, more so than anything else. So we probably will never really do that. And also, I feel like that's going to completely change the dynamic of how our show is presented, because a lot of people come on here and they know that we're just going to be entirely focused on the news, showing videos, clips, the maps, all that other stuff. If we change it to where we're on camera a lot, then it's more so about us and then less so about the news, at least in what people are visually seeing. So I don't really think if we ever really would do that. It's not that we're grotesque or anything. You can see, us on several of our videos on the channel. There is some times where we are actually in front of a camera doing something. It's just that I just feel like it adds so much additional effort that distracts from actually covering the news. And so I hope that
Honestly, I wouldn't mind being on the camera. I was considering an idea, but that we've sort of put on the back burner a little bit. I was wanting to start doing little short clips, like like legitimate short clips. The type that you flip through on YouTube. That if you're like really bored, they're kind of like TikTok reels, but they're YouTube shorts. That type of shorts. I was thinking about doing those, but we don't want to flood our channel with those. So if I was going to do them, I was going to put them on my personal channel, so that way we could do it in a separate way where it's not interfering with our main channel. So I was going to do an on-camera thing for that, just for those. But honestly, though, like it would really change up our format a lot to put our faces on camera. And also, I mean, I think personally it is a little bit distracting, because who wants to stare at our face when you could literally look at what you're like here for, which is the news.
Yeah, that's what I generally think as well. And also on top of that, folks, with the whole like short form thing, like the thing that Matthew's talking about with the YouTube shorts, I just got to be honest, I was generally the one who wasn't a big fan of that, because how I look at it is that a lot of people who watch short form content, like there's exceptions to this, and I know that some people are going to say they are the exception to that in the chat, but a lot of those folks only consume short form content. So how it would work on the business side of things, at least from how I would see it, is that if we made short form content and it was wildly successful, we're now having to bury on top of everything else we do every day, which is basically like 60, 70 hour work weeks for both Matthew and me at a minimum most of the time. We're then having to add on a whole bunch of extra hours, maybe bumping it on up to an 80-hour work week every week to make those shorts for people who only consume shorts and they consume nothing else. And so then if we don't make shorts, if we finally realize like this is a dog chasing its tail, at least on the main channel, and people, and we just get tired of making them and we don't want to make them, now we have a whole bunch of subscribers and a whole bunch of viewers that are basically inactive at that point, and then that's going to drag us down algorithmically in YouTube because of that. And that's why I was like, I don't really know. I was like, maybe we don't want to do that on the main channel, because that could end up maybe hurting it in the long run. And also on top of that, I don't really like the short form stuff, because in my personal opinion, nothing really can ever be explained too well and that's because I'm very verbose, but in less than like 60 seconds. And that would take a whole lot of work for me to figure out how in the world, if I'm making them, Matthew would generally be the only one making them, at least at the start, but I probably would join in later. Yeah. But how in the world will you make it concise in 60 seconds to get something across that, one, makes sense, it's well explained, and then that would take a whole bunch of work to figure out how to cram something down into less than 60 seconds and make it make sense, at least to me.
Well, I just see YouTube Shorts as basically like the YouTube version of handing out business cards. That's the way I see it. It's about letting people basically see our name and see what we're doing, so that way it funnels people to our real content, which is the live streams and our daily short gore videos. That's what I see it as. So I mean, that's what my idea was. But I mean, there is a good point to be had there. The short form video viewers tend to have shorter attention spans, because obviously it's like 60-second long clips, and most people are flicking through those things like they're consuming, recreational substances. Let's put it that way, which is dopamine, basically. So they're flipping through, they're getting their dopamine hit every 60 seconds, and they're not really into listening to in-depth things like a 2-hour long stream or a 3-hour long stream. So I'll probably just put those on my personal channel, just so that way I can experiment around with it and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's actually what we're gonna do. And if they do well and people like them, then that'll be that'll be tops. That'll be great, as they say. But in the meantime, that is an idea that we did have. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to David Long, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, David, for that support. He said, rabbit hole time. He said, what rare ores do we use? And 2, where do we get it? And 3, how much come from Axis powers? And 4, where do we go to replace Axis rare ore suppliers? And that might be a backup reason about acquiring Greenland. Also, by the way, the U.S. said yesterday that apparently rare earths aren't rare, they're everywhere. But Enforcer, what say you?
So, here's the crazy thing about it. We don't have to go anywhere to get any of the rare earths that we use. That's the shocker behind it. A lot of people think that that's not the case. Like, we have to go and get some, child in Africa to go dig in a big pit with thousands of other people to go get some rare earths, like lithium and whatnot. But we actually don't need that, because there is a pit that we have in America near to, I believe it's Interstate 15 at Mountain Pass. It's this pit right here. It's the Mountain Pass Mine. And that Mountain Pass Mine right there, you would not believe it, accounts for, if I'm not mistaken, something like 50% of the rare earths ore production globally. This one mine does, if I'm not mistaken. The crazy thing about that, though, is that the U.S. only refines 15% of all of the rare earths in the world. So you can see the disparity there. We produce half of the rare earths on the globe, but we only refine 15%. So that means that there's a whole whopping 35% of that ore that we can't refine. So what we do is that we load that up on a ship, usually somewhere in Long Beach because it's not that far away, and that bulk carrier ship takes all of that ore and then ships it out to China. Because China doesn't produce a lot of rare earth ore, but what they do produce a lot of is refined rare earths from the ore. And the reason why we don't do that here in America is that it's extremely toxic and heavily polluting to the surrounding areas. And because of that, the Environmental Protection Agency really couldn't find a place to put them where a whole bunch of people were happy with it. Because if it wasn't the EPA stopping those refineries from being built, it was actually the local populations where those refineries were to be built that would then buck them and say that we're not having that around here because it's going to give everyone cancer and whatnot. So China, on the other hand, because it's run by the Communist Party of China, they don't really care about giving people cancer and a whole bunch of other bad afflictions as well that come from being around a refinery like that. So they've built up basically the majority of the world's rare earth refineries. So we have to ship all of our ore, most of it at least, to China to have it refined, and then it's loaded back on another ship, and then it's shipped back to the United States, where we then get the rare earth ores, and then we use them. Or it's shipped to a whole other country where a U.S. company is based out of, like, say, India, Vietnam, or South Korea and where not, and then they use the rare earth ores there to then produce it into a final product, and then that's shipped back to the United States. So technically, as far as rare earth ores go, we don't really have to go anywhere to get them. We have basically half of the rare earth ores right here in America. The problem is, though, is that we don't have the refining capacity to refine all of that rare earth that we mine. So then that's where the issue lies, and that's where we would have to either figure out where to bite the bullet. Are we going to refine this rare earth here in the United States, or are we going to offshore that in an allied country that probably is fine with doing that? And that's really where you would have to get down into the nitty-gritty. The honest truth is that for national security purposes, it would be the most beneficial to have those refineries here in America. But at the same time, everyone in America has their right to buck something. And nobody in America, for the large part, save for very few, have accepted a rare earth refinery being built near their city to where it would be operational. Basically, everybody shoots it down because nobody wants to be around something that's going to pollute the surrounding area that badly. So that's the reason why we kind of had the conundrum we have right now. It's not a lack of ore, it's just a lack of refining abilities. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Bob Dole, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Bob Dole, for that support. We do appreciate it. They said, Zach G is my in real life friend, and we both love your content. And thank you guys for covering this and keep up the good work. And take a question from the live chat. And long live Bob Dole.
Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And very interesting to hear. And we thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew? In honor of none other than Bob Dole.
And this one's going to go to Hokey Redneck from the live chat, who said, what does Brazil think of all this stuff happening with Venezuela?
Oh, I haven't really actually heard a lot of comments from the Brazilian government on the situation, so I think they're kind of being generally moot to this. But let me go pull this up really quickly, because this will give us a bit of an idea. Countries that recognize 2024 Venezuela election. Let me go get that on the side screen, because we'll see what Venezuela thought of it. And let's see here. They ought to have a map down here somewhere. The Wikipedia on this parsed through every damn bit of info they could get on this election. The list is insanely long. So Brazil actually disputed and did not recognize the results of the 2024 Venezuelan election. So I would assume that if they had any comment on it, they're probably indifferent to it, or they probably are in support of it, because most people in Europe, except for the British, were like, well, it happens. Then Britain was like, we had nothing to do with this. And it's like, no one thought you did. Like, why did you have to say that? And so I would assume that Brazil is probably just indifferent, like, it is what it is. Or they are probably in support of it, I'd assume. But I haven't heard an official announcement from the Brazilian Foreign Ministry to know for sure. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see Bilges keeps saying, oh, Enforcement, what are you talking about in your own personal channel? I have a personal channel. I don't ever post on it, to be honest, because I put all my effort into our main channel here, because obviously we have a really good idea here on the main channel doing the short war videos and the live streams. So I just put all my effort here, and so does the Enforcer. But my personal channel has one video on it. It's the video of that of my honey badger I was reviewing in the video. I think I did that video like 3 years ago. Yeah, it was 3 years ago, actually. So I was actually, let's see here, I was 21 years old, actually 21 or 22 years old when I actually filmed that video right there. So that's kind of wild to think about. I look like an old man now compared to what I looked like in that video. It's crazy how much I've aged in 3 years. I've really aged a lot. I think this YouTube thing is taking me out.
Damn, like that.
But it's aging me like hell, man.
And then some people are about to ask, Enforcer, where's your personal YouTube channel? This is my personal YouTube channel. It became the main channel because back when I started it, I was literally the only one doing this, and then it blew up, and then Matthew joined in, and then it became the official Enforcer channel. But it's basically like, in a way, it's like my personal channel, but it really isn't. So there's that going for it. That's why I don't have a personal channel, because this basically was the personal channel until it went big. So with that, I hope that addresses that well. Maybe I can make a personal channel somehow, some way, and do that. I could, if y'all wanted side content from both of us, but generally, I'll just be completely honest with y'all. Side content is very hard to pull off, because this basically takes everything to do just on the main channel, and we don't have a team behind us, so everything's got to be done by us. There's no delegating it to anyone in an office anywhere. So it's something that generally takes up our day every day. So it's really hard to do anything on the side. This is basically it.
And honestly, we could put out our own content. We might do that from time to time. It can't be anything routine, though, because it simply takes too much effort that we have to put into the main channel to make it work properly. So we don't want to start, divvying up our attention between side projects and stuff like that, and then screwing over the main channel, because we don't want to sacrifice any quality on the main channel. We want to make sure we stay dedicated to that. But yeah, also, let's see here. I saw something I was going to address. Someone said here, let's see. Somebody said, the honey badger. You have a honey badger? I don't have an animal honey badger, by the way. In fact, I think that's illegal. I don't have an animal honey badger. I have a honey badger rifle. That's what I have. So it's not an animal. It's just it's a nice little rifle. It's a cool little rifle.
Let's see here. I can find you a picture of one. Yeah, this is basically like the loadout you have, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it actually. In fact, I think that's the Trash Panda suppressor that I got with it too. So yeah, mine's a little bit different though because even though mine is SBR'd now because I had to SBR it because the rules changed and stuff like that, so I went ahead and converted it to an SBR with the ATF. I don't have a stock on mine. I still have the pistol brace, but I believe I can't ever keep the rules straight, so I just play it safe and just register it as such, but I believe they consider a pistol brace a stock now, I think. But they've changed that rule around so many times I can't keep it straight. But yeah, this is the rifle right here. In fact, I have an EOTech on it just like that one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I looked at this one. I was like, damn, this is like his like whole kit. I think you also have that flashlight on the side of yours as well. I'm not really sure on that, but
Yeah,
still.
I have the Surefire on the side of it, the EOTech, the suppressor, and I also have a sling for it too.
On the other hand, folks, I went more simple for what I got. I have an AKS 74U. It's a semi-automatic, but it literally looks just like that one. So that's what I have. Pretty cool in my opinion, and it's quite bare bones. There's literally no way to modify anything on this deal. So like as far as it goes, it is just it's an SBR. And that's it. Like, there's no way you can add anything to this or subtract anything from it. So it is what it is. I don't really have to like care too much about whether they're changing the rule on if it's a stock or a brace or whatnot, because there's literally no way to add anything to this at all. Even a sight. Like I don't even think my crank it doesn't actually, to come to think of it, because it has to be able to fold the stock. It doesn't even have that little scope mount that comes on AKs, at least some of them. So I can't even mount an optic on that thing. It's just an iron sight AKS 74U. And I also saw someone say cranks kind of suck. I mean, kind of, but it is kind of cool too. I mean, like it's a snub nosed AK. Like that's what kind of what's just neat about them. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Quisi, who 1992, who put in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Quisi, for that support. They said do a clip channel. It couldn't hurt if it's effective.
Well, it actually could. Like at least the main channel, it actually could. Because like we were like there's some other things that we were experimenting with behind the scenes with the channel that looks like it might have had a little bit of damage, and we're not really sure yet. We're still trying to figure that out. But outside of that, it would be something to definitely try out on a side channel, that's for sure. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, by the way, that honey badger, someone said, isn't that gun made for like close quarters combat? It's a short barrel, so it's good for that like situation like that. Not that I'm just a target shooter type person, so the range and stuff like that, that's all I've ever done with it. And in fact, I'll be honest, I really like I got the gun originally not expecting to like go target practice with it a lot because the ammunition it takes is 300 blackout. So 300 blackout's not cheap. And I found that out kind of stupidly after the fact. I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to shoot this thing as much as I thought as I was going to get to shoot it. So it's like a piece of art to me. It's a very beautiful weapon. It's probably the most beautiful weapon, in my opinion, that's out there. And it's more of like a piece of art. And also, I have it for home defense. Not right this second, but I have it for home defense at other times. So, that's mainly what I use it for. But yeah, 300 blackout, though, is not a cheap round whatsoever, which is a damn shame. I wish they'd make that cheaper. But jumping into our next one here, this one go to Quisi once again, who put in another 20. And they said, what is the LSA?
The LSA is the Lee Spring Army, and the LSA is an organization that is pro-American and pro-Western in its interests. We are a non-political, non-religious organization, gluten-free and dairy-free. I'm just kidding about the last two, but beyond that, the rest of that's true and accurate. We also have a flag and an anthem to go along with the community, so that way they have something to rally around, the anthem and the flag, and also the amazing folks that make up the ranks of the LSA. So that is what the LSA is. So a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Trucking Chef once again. He puts in a 10. He said, I used to live down in St. George, Utah, and those missionaries go all over the world, and sometimes they go to really sketchy areas. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it either. I mean, they got a lot of courage. I would give them that. I got to give them a lot of credit. And I got to say, a humongous thanks to you for support. Really cool that you used to live down in St. George of all places. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for support. And really quickly, Matthew, I'm actually going to do something really magical. I'm going to disconnect from the call and reconnect to it because there is like you're kind of turning into Robo, Matt, and I'm not really sure what's up with that, but I think restarting the call might fix that. So give me just a second, and we will get him back on air. So we disconnect and then we reconnect like that, magic, and then we give him the screen share again so that we can see what's going on. That's his way to see with his eyes. And Matthew, talk to us.
Oh, hello there. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear now.
It's magical. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ronnie Knight Dive. And thank you very much, Ronnie, for that 5. He said, those boys are allegedly coked out of their heads and spooked and shooting at the shadows. Ha ha ha.
I mean, that's really not that far off from it, probably, of what the Venezuelan army is up to down there. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. So big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Born in Ukraine, who puts in a 5. They said, thanks for Monday breaking news updates in LSA and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you for enjoying our Monday breaking news. We are very honored to be able to put this together and present it to all of y'all, even on an off day, because off days are only off days when nothing's going on. If something is going on, and when I mean nothing's going on, there's always something going on, but nothing incredibly big. Because whenever there is something going on, you can bet your boots we're going to cover it. And when we cover it, we cover it. Because yesterday, for example, we were number 26 in America. So we covering it. Like, so we definitely covered this every day. And I mean, you know, that's quite on up there, folks. I think there's let's see here. PBS was below us. Let's see here. And Iran International was below us as well. Let's see. Steak. Oh my goodness. We finally beat Steak.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah!
God. I can't believe it.
Oh my God.
Steak fell down. Oh my God. That guy right there is always at the top of the charts.
I got nothing against this guy at all, by the way. I just want to make that clear. We're not beefing with Steak, but Steak is usually like in the top 5 in America. So seeing that we actually finally beat Steak on some given day, like honestly, that is crazy. I cannot believe that. Big respect to Steak, though. Apparently he's a very good like gaming channel YouTuber, and that's why he's very popular. But at the same time, really crazy to see we finally beat Steak, and everyone's always like, "What the hell, Steak?" And then we're like, "We don't know." But anyways, let's see what else. Who else? News channels? And we're talking about mainstream news, folks. We don't really compare ourselves to other YouTube channels because we look at that as friendly competition. So, you know, we don't want to be like, oh, look, we beat them if we did. But, oh my goodness, Tucky G fell off.
Oh no.
Bro, he was number 86. Goodness gracious.
You know, I think Venezuela might not be that bad after all.
Oh my lord, that is crazy.
That
Look at that.
Obnoxious.
Number 86. Damn. Like recently, folks, he's been up in like the top 20s. That was quite a dip that day. But really crazy to see that nonetheless. Live Now from Fox did beat us yesterday. Apparently covering possibly a car chase. And let's see. This Hispanic news channel appears to have also beat us as well. Ice Show Speed obviously beat us. And let's see. The Pat McAfee Show also beat us as well.
PBD Patrick Bet David did a live stream? Wait a minute, go back down for a second.
Huh?
Oh yeah, PBD podcast. What was he streaming about?
I don't know.
What does it say?
I don't know. Like his thumbnails are like kind of like a little bit indescript, to be entirely honest. I don't mean...
Hover over it and see what that says. If you hover over it.
Oh, he was covering.
Say.
Oh no, it says Maduro captured, and then it goes into.
Oh,
like,
okay. Oh,
and then it goes into like political stuff. So we can't even talk about that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, folks. We're always honored to be bringing y'all the news. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Big thanks to y'all for the support and always enjoying the show and considering to be the primary source of news. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to DW Brock, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, DW Brock, for that support as well. And he said, thank you for the breaking news stream. And take one from the list.
I see what you did there. Oh, but I do thank you, Matt, for your support and enjoying the channel, and we will make sure to get one from the list. So what do we got, Matthew?
So this one here goes to Evan, who said, what are the odds of the cartels in Venezuela trying to take down the government there?
Fairly low, because the government is kind of like almost like a shield for them in a way, and it also kind of like buries them underneath so that way they can do whatever they want without having a lot of attention put on it. So probably fairly low in my opinion. So I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you for support and sponsoring the live chat question, and we are on to the next one.
And we've also got a 5 from Nancode. And Nancode said, Brazilian here, and cheers for Venezuela and United States and the LSA members, and especially the legendary hosts, Andrew and Matthew. Thank you very much for that.
Legendary. Damn, that's a really high praise right there. We thank you for that. And I got to say, a huge thanks to you for the support. And I got to say, I think that in general, like, you know, to get into the nuance of it, capturing Maduro was really cool and, like, honestly, kind of awesome to watch. But at the same time, it didn't really achieve what we were wanting it to. So it was good in a way, but then it really didn't do anything. So I'll be honest with y'all, if we were going to do this, we basically had to conduct a full military invasion of Venezuela because there was really no other way that this would have ever succeeded without doing that. And I mean, we could have nabbed Maduro anyways in the midst of that, in the midst of an invasion, but there was really no other way that we would have been able to topple the whole Venezuelan government. And we're going to probably see that the administration is going to have to figure out how to crack open that can of worms and deal with it. Now that that's become obviously clear. And also, I don't think it's going to be that hard because considering that they literally were shooting at ghosts tonight, I think that we'll be in the clear. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And a big shout out to our viewers in Brazil. Very cool country. And so with that, big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Chef Danny B. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that support as well. And he said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. And, well, I'm not the chef today. I only made chicken tenders today. But thanks for all the hard work on the day off, and I'll be Chef Danny again tomorrow in LLT, LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Chef Danny B. And a humongous thanks to you for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because it is folks like you who help to make us a reality on air and help us to be able to talk and speak to the people. And we have to say that while you were not a chef today, you were always a chef to the LSA. So a huge thanks to you once again to the official chef of the LSA. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Shannon Newman. And Shannon said misinformation and disinformation with propaganda is the way of the CCP honeypot. And hi to the LSA.
And I tell you, you got to watch out for those honeypots, especially because Xi Jinping knows many honeypots. Honey. But beyond that, I got to say,
he looks down at people like peasants. I don't know if you saw that today, but he was looking at the South Korean leadership like they were peasants.
Really?
Yeah, let me go grab it real quick.
Yeah,
let me go put this in the likes tab. This was really something else. He always looks at everybody like he's just like sort of like mystified by like, look at these peasants. It's like, why does he look like that all the time? Let me go grab this post real quick. I think it's under the replies tab. I'll let you know when I have it.
Honey. But beyond that, you gotta watch out for the CCP, folks. They don't have America's best interest at heart, and they don't have your best interest at heart. Don't listen to anything. Okay. Let's go get it. Is it under the likes or the replies or where?
Under the likes tab.
Oh, dang, he's looking rough. Jeez.
Look at that. Look at that. That South Korean fella taking it with, I think it's a Samsung, I think, right there. Oh, look at the next picture, though.
That one's rough.
Look at him. He just looks at him like, this peasant wants a picture.
Dude, you know how he's looking? He's like, I wonder if we could break into that with Huawei or something like that. Like, you know, it's like, yeah.
This has no back door. You can check.
Man, bro. Also, I gotta say, by the way, folks, I don't know what it is with the westernized Asian countries, but they have this obsession with like the perfectly round glass frames for the glasses. And I'm not gonna lie, they actually look really decent. Like it's got like a very 1940s-ish look to it. Because that was a very common sort of a look in the US in the 1940s for glasses. But I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't actually look that bad.
I'm not a huge fan of it.
I mean, it looks fairly formal, though.
Yeah, kind of, kind of. Also, by the way, what was this guy doing trying to take a selfie anyway? Maybe that's why he was looking like that. He was like, "Why is this guy taking a selfie like this?"
I mean, just to show off South Korean technology, I suppose.
I mean, possibly, maybe, but I mean, I don't think Xi is too thrilled with this right here. I think he's thinking about possibly taking him over as a result of this.
Man, Xi's sitting there thinking, maybe I could invade South Korea or something. It's like,
Man, it was the dancing with Maduro that did it for that whole situation. That's what did it in. That was the feather that broke the camel's back. And in this situation, it was a selfie that broke the camel's back. This will be what led to the doom of South Korea right here.
man, honestly though, the Chinese better not mess with the South Koreans, man. Because you ever try and conduct armed action on their soil, all of the guys in parliament are going to go, quick, to the building. And they're all going to run in there and go, we voted no. And then the military is going to go, aw. And then they're just going to go home. It's like, all right, there we go. Democracy in action. Honestly, I can't believe that they actually followed that order from the Korean Congress or the parliament. They all got together and just voted, we vote no to this attempted coup. And then the military just went, oh, okay. And then they all went home. I was like, wow, what a surprise.
Yeah, really, I would say.
I'd definitely say so. But with that, it is time for us, folks, to move on into the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Halo Moss Turbo, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, good sir, for the support as well. He said, for the Venezuelan government to collapse, would that mean removing the acting president along with one or two officials, such as the defense minister?
We have to literally destroy the thing from the ground up. Like, that's basically the only way to get rid of a government. You can't leave the apparatus of a dictatorship intact in any capacity and then expect a democratic government to come into being. Because there's going to be so many bureaucrats and so many different government and military officials that are completely against that new government that it will not survive the pressure from under. So basically the only way you can do it is going in there and cleaning the slate. Because if you look at any other country that has ever had its government removed and replaced, the slate had to be cleaned. Look at Germany. The entire Nazi slate disappeared after they unconditionally surrendered on May 8th of 1945. We got rid of anyone and everyone, unless if they were absolutely necessary, from the Nazi era that was involved in the Nazi party or the Nazi government. And when I say absolutely necessary, there were a couple of caveats and exceptions. Like, for example, in some cities, if I'm not mistaken, like Munich, everyone in the water treatment department of the city's facilities were actually all active and participating members of the Nazi party, and there was literally no way to replace those guys, so they all got to keep their jobs. But in every other situation, we would get rid of everyone from the ground up. Like, denazification was a serious thing. In Imperial Japan, while we allowed the emperor to remain, basically everyone else who was involved in the Imperial Japanese government that was at all questionable, they were all basically removed. And that system was also built pretty much from the ground up. In Iran, especially in the 1953 coup d'etat, that's also what we did as well. And so basically in any other country where we go in and try and remove a government and replace it, you basically have to get rid of the entire thing from the ground up and then rebuild it. Also, Iraq is a great example of that, because while Iraq is a hardly functioning country and its democracy hardly works, it still has no resemblance to the Hussein era regime that existed for decades up until then. So generally that's what you would have to do. You would have to go into Venezuela and you would have to completely remove the government. That doesn't, and also, by the way, I do have to say, because some people may be taking that as you have to, execute everyone in Venezuela. Not at all. They just had to be removed from their legal or lawful positions in the government. So they don't even you don't have to go around conducting a Nuremberg trial on everyone. You just go, all right, the Venezuelan government as it exists right now is dissolved, effective due to our force in the region and the fact that we're occupying the country. This government is now dissolved, and then you go through the process of rebuilding a new government with none of those people involved in any operation of it. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And Matthew, I do think that it's Discord issues at this point, because it restarted up again after the call began.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, are you responding immediately after I'm saying something? Because there's like a 5-second lag at this point.
Yeah, I'm responding pretty much immediately.
Damn, bro. Oh, no. Like, bro, Discord's having a tough time tonight. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a 10. And Neil said, could you guys maybe do a video explaining why America needs to support Ukraine and explain why they're the good guys and the Russians are the bad ones?
Uh, we could try, but generally that would really fall out of what we do because that would be more so like a video essay. And while we kind of do video essays, it's always on breaking news from the day of. And so we could try, but that probably would not really be a big video. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Trippy, and Trippy said, so what can we expect from Russia and China regarding Americans' actions recently, and what's possible soon? Just talk, no action?
Generally, yeah, they're just going to lodge diplomatic protests, and that's going to be about it. There's really not a lot that they can do within reason, so they're basically stuck at lodging protests and ending it there. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Halo Moss Turbo once again, who put in a 5. They said, if the U.S. was to do another Operation Absolute Resolve, should it go after the acting president and the defense minister? And what about the other officials?
I would say that another operation similar to the one that captured Maduro would be absolutely unnecessary and fruitless. At this point, we have to conduct a complete military occupation of the country to see that the government is truly dismantled and then rebuilt in a way that would support American interests. That's a fairly heavy-handed sort of a way to go with it, and a lot of people would like to see that we could be a lot more indirect and less forceful with it, but at this point that's really the only thing that will work, because we also have to go in there and we have to completely dismantle the collectivos and all of the other factions that the Venezuelan socialist government has created to ensure that even through the citizenry their government would remain intact. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and how about this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to the new IKB, who put in a 5. And they said something here. I'm not sure what it means, though, so I can't read it. But thank you very much, though, for that support, and we do appreciate that very much. And we also have a 5 from KBX, who said, yes or no, does pineapple belong on pizza? Is a hot dog a sandwich? And LSA. I would say, honestly, pineapple is fine on pizza. It's an acquired taste, though. It's a very strange deal. But I've had it from time to time, but it got old quick. A hot dog is not a sandwich. We've had experience with people that like hot dogs, and generally they're not very savory people, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, I used to be a pineapple on pizza person, but nowadays I'm just not really a pineapple on pizza person. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't really feel like it vibes to me. You know, like the flavors really go along with each other too much. But I don't really have anything against people who like pineapple on pizza. You know, it's like, you know, everyone has their own tastes and their preferences. You know, some people out there, they eat bull testicles. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but some people do. So, you know, like to each their own. I'm just not eating that stuff. They actually call those mountain oysters, by the way. Like that's a legitimate like cuisine of the Midwest. But beyond that, though, I would have to generally say, hot dogs, not really my favorite thing. I'd say that hot dogs, well, I won't go there. I was about to hit a really, really strong statement on that, but I won't go there. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel.
Yeah, real quick, I got a question real quick. You said earlier that the U.S. should build Venezuelan society from the ground up. Is that what you say?
No, the government.
Build the Venezuelan government from the ground up?
Yeah, like, you know, like completely erase the thing and let it be built up from the ground up. However that works, it works. Like, I don't believe the U.S. should get into nation building. That should generally be up to the Venezuelan people. But if the current regime exists in any extent, at any level, it will not allow anything to replace it.
I mean, how else would you rebuild the government except from the ground up? I mean, you're not going to build it from like the roof down.
Well, that's currently what the U.S. government's trying to do, and someone asked the question that, you know, could we go in and just nab the acting president and take him away? And I was like, no, we would have to completely get rid of the thing and start from the ground up.
Also, that was supposed to be my joke, by the way, but, you know.
Oh, oh heavens! I'm so sorry, oh boy. I thought that was a legitimate statement. I was like, what? How bizarre! I was like, how bizarre!
You hadn't seen that comedian? Now I got to explain it. Otherwise, people are about to be like, "What the hell was he doing?" You hadn't seen that comedian? He's a comedian dude that goes around making fun of these like statements that people always make, like saying he's dead and gone. Like, what the hell does it mean to be dead and gone? Has anybody ever died and stayed? Like, you haven't seen that guy, by the way, on like these short videos?
No, I haven't.
Oh, he's pretty good. I think he's a old school comedian, but he's pretty good though. He's around. He's making the rounds on the shorts.
You know, I'd have to say we should show some of his clips on air and get copyright strike. Oh man, no, you can't do that. But you'll have to send me some of those on the gram, old boys. That way I can take a look at them after the show and know what you're talking about the next time you do that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, folks. With that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here goes to Neil Vizinant, who puts in a 10 once again. And he said, I was thinking about using a video like that as a debate tool. Maybe go over Russian war crimes against Ukraine that no one knows about or talks about.
You know, you could do that. You could do that. That'd be an interesting idea. It's just that with videos like that, they really don't fall within the format of what we do in the algorithm, and YouTube doesn't really like it when people kind of fall too far out of form. So it wouldn't really do too well. So it would take a whole bunch of work and effort to make a video like that, and it's something that takes a whole bunch of editing and work beyond what we normally do, which is usually pretty laborious in its own right. For us to put it out, and then it might not really do too good. I could address it on air, and we've done that a load of times actually over the 1,412 days that we've been on air. But making it into a video, that would be rather tough. But we could see. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to ER2 The Win, who puts in a 10. He said, while you're in town, check out Villaggio if you want pizza, and take one from the chat.
Oh, I'll make sure to. And I thank you for the recommendation and the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now. So a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And that live chat question is going to go to Nothing Man, who said, any idea about what happened with Poland's airspace last night? And as far as we can tell, it was simply a precaution. There was a major, and I mean major, Russian attack on Ukraine last night, and they sent those airspace warnings out basically to take a precaution to protect the Polish airspace. So nothing ended up happening. No drone incursions occurred. Nothing like that, thankfully. But Enforcer, what say you?
And that's exactly how it went. And so a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Jayhawk, who said, longtime listener, and thanks for that work. And did you mention that you're a reenactor? I do World War I and World War II German.
Yeah.
And Ben de Neuville, Danke.
And thank you so much for the support. And I used to be a reenactor, but not anymore. That whole hobby kind of set sail in its own right, in its own way. It was interesting while I did it, but there's just not really anywhere to do it out in Utah, and I kind of, to be entirely honest, lost some interest in it to a degree. For one, because I just had a lot going on with YouTube, and then two, there was some other stuff that went on that generally, honestly, to be entirely frank, kind of turned me away from the hobby. So I do thank you for the support, and that's actually really cool to hear. I hope that you have a blast doing that, because doing a World War I Germany, Imperial Germany, is actually really interesting as far as historically how it worked culturally, militarily, and so on. But it is a rather expensive hobby. And also, I got to say that World War II Germany is incredibly important, because there always has to be a bad guy in all the reenactments. It's the British for the Revolutionary War, it's the Confederates for the Civil War, and then it's basically Imperial Germany and then World War II Germany in the modern era. So it's good to hear that you do that, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee simply said, none other than...
Hey.
And thank you very much, Bruce Lee, for that support as well. And we also have a 2 from Plazoth, and Plazoth did not leave a comment, but thank you very much, good sir, once again, for that support. We also have a 2 from MX Rider 12, who said, it's a cartel warthog, bro.
And cartel warthog, I wouldn't know about that. But I do thank you so much for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, it's a wonderful thing to know that folks like you supported this channel and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Trippy, who put in a 2, and said, possible she's counting on it to sway support.
Maybe, but we'll have to wait and see. But I do thank you massively once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to I will eat your hot dogs, who put in a one. We
Ah,
do appreciate that support. We also have a one from AK Wiz Turbo once again. And we also appreciate your support, AK, for once again helping to keep the channel running. And with that, folks, we are now moving on from that right there, from our super chats. And once again, a huge shout out to everybody for supporting the channel once again tonight. It is now time to grab some live chat questions and also our Morse code decoders as well. Also, Phoenix Xavier said in the live chat, he said, does the honey badger have a name? I just literally call it the honey badger. It already has a pretty sick name. Does your car have a name too? I don't have a name for my car though. I ain't gone that far with it, but I don't have a name for that, man. Maybe one day I'll name it, but
I got a
I've never
name
given
for
it
mine.
one. But what is it?
I call it the car. That's the way, man. It's a very genius name.
Well, damn. I mean, what else would you call it?
I don't know. Hell, you could call it the automobile. Hey, he gave me crickets. Like, what the hell? He gave me crickets.
Crickets.
Oh, man. But anyways, honestly, that actually shocked me, man. That'd be like a clutching my pearls moment right there, man. I sat there and said, I call it the car, and then he gave me crickets. I was like, what the hell? I was like, that was a straightforward one. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Oh, man. I sit there and try and come up with an original joke. He gives me crickets. Oh, man. But anyways, with that, it is time. Is it time for us to get on into the live chats, oh boy?
It is time for the live chat questions.
Oh, well, also, by the way, folks, y'all are not going to believe this, but technically the stream is going overtime. We started way earlier, but it is over 3.5 hours long. So technically we have started to enter overtime. So I have to say this up front. I do give a huge shout out to Lee Springer and Cinnamon because I know that y'all got the Morse code message once again tonight, but it's the same as last night. I do give y'all a huge shout out though for continuing to decipher that Morse code message. And with that in mind, we're going to be getting 3 live chat questions and then rounding the stream on out for the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and I must say, I have not eaten all night long, actually. My food has been sitting on the counter about 10 feet behind me, and occasionally I turn back and stare at it and salivate, and then I turn around and try not to weep because I'm starving, and that food's just sitting back there staring at me from the counter. So I've been sitting here the whole time talking about Venezuela and just salivating the entire time. But anyways, not because I want to take over Venezuela, by the way. That kind of came off wrong. I'm not salivating over Venezuela. I'm salivating over that chicken sandwich that's sitting over there on the counter. But anyways, jumping into our live chat, this one goes to Scottish. He said, do you think that it's Russian foreign intelligence running around that joint?
I would doubt it. I think it really is truly Venezuelans doing Venezuelan things. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to none other than Chip, who said, not to adjust mental gears again, but is there any additional news about Iran's leader getting put out?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of news in the Iranian Revolution today. It's just that this stream was a breaking news stream for Venezuela only, but there was a huge amount of firefights once again today. The situation is still destabilizing, and it's only getting worse. So I hope that does kind of address that well in a very large overview, but we will be getting into a lot more detail on that tomorrow. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than Kat, who said, what kind of drones do the Venezuela people have? And what do you think?
They have Mohajer 6s from Iran, and they also have a couple of others as well, but basically they all come from Iran. So those are the drones that they have in their possession in very limited numbers that the Venezuelans might have been shooting at. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, we have one last thing to address from Neil Visinant, who threw in a 5, and he said, not complaining, you guys are awesome, but did we ever get that video of just the anthem? Now go eat! And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And actually, no, we haven't. We probably will be releasing the national anthem as a single, like as a video on the 4th of July, coming up this year. That was my plan, at least, for it, because we will be off air most likely for the 4th of July, because it's a channel holiday. So we will actually release that on that day and let everyone have the national anthem as a standalone then, with the music video included and everything else. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much for watching. We've had 250,000 people watch this stream in 3.5 hours. That's 250,000 people. That's a lot of folks. And we also had a peak viewership tonight of about 19,000 people. we're entirely honored and appreciative to know that so many people continue to consider the Enforcer channel to be their primary source of news. We thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to have y'all here. This channel does run 6 days a week, sometimes 7, which is going to be the case this week, at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single night, covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world in picture and video evidence. And if there is enough news, we do make short war videos. And speaking of which, if there is enough news tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. So with that, folks, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Granny, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And we do appreciate all 250,000 people for joining us tonight, a massive audience tonight. We appreciate all of you for choosing us as your news source as always, and we will see you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and once again, maybe a short war video midday tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. But with that, thank you all once again, and of course, Slava Ukraine, here from Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Spring on me,